Hold yours.
Yes, sir. I imagine I'm ready for it.
Yeah, probably so. Good evening. We're about to start this meeting of the Sumner County Board of Education for November 15th, 2022. Before we do, I'm going to stand for a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to our country's flag. Anyone who would like to join me, please feel free to do so. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you here this evening to the business meeting of the Sumner County Board of Education. Before we get started on our agenda tonight, I want to do a little housekeeping and be sure that everyone here is on the same page. As previously mentioned, this is a business meeting of the Sumner County Board of Education. The public is not only welcome, but invited to be our guest at the meeting, at any meeting. We are here tonight to conduct the business that is on our agenda, and that's exactly what we're going to do. In the past, the chair has requested that all who are present adhere to the rules and follow proper decorum, but this has been an issue to some who decide that they do not want to follow the rules. Those rules include, but not limited to, no applause during the meeting, no outburst, willfully making noise that is distracting to the podium or the board members, yielding to the chair when called to do so. I was elected by a majority of my peers on the board to chair the meetings and to see that our job gets done, and I intend to fulfill my duties. We will be recognizing some outstanding students this evening who deserve our praise and applause. However, that does not carry over to citizens' comments or any other part of the meeting. Once we have recognized our outstanding students and get into the rest of the meeting, there is to be no disruptions from anyone in this room. If disruptions break out, you put the chair in a position that I prefer not to be in, but we'll face it head on. The chair has several things that can be done in this case. The meeting can be recessed for 10 minutes, 10 days, or as long as the chair feels it necessary. The chair can adjourn the meeting, and this meeting will be over. The chair can have the disruptor or disruptors removed from the meeting, or the chair can clear the room completely and we will proceed to the meeting without you. I prefer to have a very respectful meeting and not have to deal with any of this, but I'm prepared to do so if necessary, and there will be no warnings. This is your warning. I wish none of this. I wish only to have a productive meeting with all of you here simply respecting and obeying the rules. And by the way, they're the same rules that the board is supposed to go by as well. I thank you in advance for being a well-behaved guest. And with that, first item on the agenda is call to order. So I call the meeting to order. Roll call. Mr. Johnson, do we have the roll?
Yes, sir.
Next item on the agenda is adoption of regular agenda. Is approval of the regular agenda is presented. Is there a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to add an item
Okay,
to tonight's agenda.
Please state your motion.
I would like to add a motion that we, for a discussion and/or action to remove the book Lawn Boy by Jonathan Evison from all Sumner County schools. And I'd like to explain why I believe we need to add that.
Give a one or two sentence description would be fine.
Well, I mean, I'm allowed to speak
You are if your motion gets approved and it passes, then we'll put it on the agenda, and at the agenda you have the right for discussion at that time. If you want to put something on the agenda, you make your motion, simply make your motion, give you a one or two sentences of why you think it needs to be on the agenda, and we'll move forward with that.
Okay. So we were told that a process would be implemented. That process was in accordance with Board Policy 4.403. And we were told several times about that. And then we were told that that policy, that process was no longer valid.
Mr. King, I have to call your attention to what we're talking about now is adding that motion to the agenda. We're not getting into the motion, into the the subject matter of the motion.
Okay.
We want to stay in order, and we're talking about adding an agenda item. So tell us why.
Well, I'm allowed to explain why I want to
why
add
you
the
want to
agenda.
add the agenda item.
I'm allowed to explain why.
However, you're getting into the meat of the discussion where you're out of order.
Mr. Chairman, can I raise a point of order, please?
Please state your point of order.
We have to move to adopt, like there has to be a motion for us to adopt the regular agenda before we can have an amendment to the agenda. So we called for one, but no one had made the motion to adopt the consent, or to adopt the agenda. I move that we do adopt the agenda, just so that we can be procedurally correct. If we can do that prior to him making a motion to amend. You can't amend an agenda if an agenda hasn't been presented.
Well, the chair takes that well. I think you're right about that. So we need to.
That's not right.
move
That is
to
not
adopt the
correct.
agenda.
We have to. I'm allowed to add request to add an
We're going
item to the
allow
agenda.
that. We're going to allow that, but she makes
Okay.
the point, and I agree with the point, that we don't have an agenda yet. So once we get the agenda, then you can add something to the agenda. You can't add something to something we don't have yet. And so her point is well taken. So the motion on the floor is to approve the regular agenda. Is there a motion? So moved by Ms. Andrews, second by Ms. Hayes.
I got a
Discussion.
point of order because I think that approval of the regular agenda means that we approve the agenda as it is without any other items allowed to be added after the fact.
We can add,
That is not
you have to adopt the agenda to be able to add something to it. We don't have anything to add to right now. So when you adopt the agenda, then your motion is in order to add something to that agenda. So
Okay.
we have a motion and a second to approve the regular agenda. Is there any discussion? As presented. Seeing none, all in favor? We'll have to do a roll call vote. Mr. Lacy is missing with us tonight. He had some work issues where he couldn't be with us tonight. So, Mr. Johnson, we'll have you call the roll.
Ms. Hayes? Yes. Mr. Lancaster?
Is Stephen still going to be allowed to make his motion?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, regardless of what I vote. Okay, yes.
Ms. Andrews?
Procedurally, I'm going to disagree. If we are voting to adopt the agenda, if he's going to be able to make a motion, it has to be part of an amendment, and it has to be prior to us voting on the agenda. We made a motion. The motion was to approve the agenda. It received a proper second. It is then open for discussion. Once it's open for discussion, you can then amend. At this point would be when it would be proper for Mr. King, if he wanted to make his amendment, that would be when he would do that.
I would like to get clarification from our board attorney on the procedure at hand, just for clarification, if that's possible.
Yes, I will say I am not an expert on Robert's Rules of Order, which our policies require us to follow. But having heard this discussion, there is a motion to approve the regular agenda. While that motion is pending, it is appropriate for motions to amend that regular agenda, and then the board can vote on it, either as amended or not, or if the amendment does not pass, as originally presented.
All right, let's just back up front here then. Why don't we just go ahead and have Mr. King put his amendment on there? So you're okay with that?
Yes, that's
Okay, because it was your point of order, so we want to make sure that that's okay. Mr. King, you've already made the motion, actually,
Okay?
but you don't have a second yet. So,
I second.
okay, Mr. Lancaster seconds it. Discussion on adding the motion to the agenda. Any discussion?
So I can make a discussion now. Is that correct?
Only on adding the
The
amendment to the agenda.
Okay, that's what I would like to do.
You don't need to get into the meat of what it is or what just really just a couple of
Okay,
sentences.
I just want to explain why I want to add it, okay? So I requested that the book be removed according to board policy 4.40012 on obscene materials. I was denied. I demanded its removal again. I was denied again under that same policy. And I was told that my comments at the meeting were considered a formal challenge and we would be dealt with in accordance with board policy 4.403. We were told that that was the process being implemented. We told our constituents this was the process being implemented, and now we are being told that that was not the process. At our commissioner meeting last night, Chief Academic Officer Mr. Langford said that a process was implemented. Process is key. We follow our process. He also said that my comments were treated as a challenge under board policy 4.403.
Mr. King, you're really getting into discussion of the meat of the, this is not adding, we're trying to add this to the agenda.
Right, I'm explaining why it needs to be added.
Well, your point's well taken, so we need to move along.
I don't know if it is. I don't know if my point is well taken. I haven't really explained my
You'll have a chance to
point.
explain your point if it gets on the agenda. If it gets on the agenda, then we put it on the agenda, and then we open it up for discussion for all concerned.
Yeah, but you see, I'm explaining why I'm trying to persuade my colleagues
This is not the place to persuade them on the meat of it. This is
no,
the
to
place
persuade them on the amendment.
to-
I'm explaining them why I want this amendment added to the agenda. Okay, that's all I'm doing. I'm explaining the amendment. We have an amendment to add this item to the agenda. I'm allowed to give an explanation.
Well, continue with your explanation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. He said that my comments were treated as a challenge under board policy 4.403, and they started the review process. He said this involved forming review committees at the schools. There's only one policy in our board manual that calls for the creation of review committees to review challenge books, and that is board policy 4.403. Ms. Andrews stated that, quote, "We have a procedure, and I did not want to set a precedent of curtailing that procedure. I fully expect the book to be reviewed. And again, this can only be in reference to board policy 4.403. But now we're being told by our director of schools and our board attorney that that process is now invalid. They are, in fact, in the words of Ms. Andrews, curtailing the procedure, and why. I brought to the board's attention that new state legislation requires school boards to make the final decision on any challenge book under this policy. State legislation deems that review committees can only give recommendation and do not have the authority to make a final decision. This was confirmed by our board attorney, who stated, quote, "Board policy 4.403 substantially implements Tennessee's Age Appropriate Materials Act and establishes the school board as the ultimate decision maker on whether to remove a challenged book. Upon learning this fact, the board would have to vote, a decision was made to curtail the original process that was implemented." I will shorten my comments if that helps. We were told that the process implemented would be in accordance with board policy 4.403, which requires the school board to make the final decision on a challenged book, to tell the public that a process was implemented, and then to do an about face and forego that process altogether. This is a disservice to the citizens and to the board. This is a serious matter. There are many people who do not want Lawn Boy removed. We received an email today from someone expressing that. And to my astonishment, an entire host of people are defending it. We've received several emails asking us to keep it. Several emails suggest the possibility of legal action if any book is removed. Many are saying publicly that the book does not actually violate the obscene materials law, and that the passages I read in the previous meeting were merely just taken out of context, and there's really nothing wrong with them in that regard. So the question remains, who is actually banning the book? I believe the citizens have the right to know. There are only two possibilities. It's either the director of schools or the school board. If we don't vote on this, after 3 months of this whole ordeal having been put in motion, only one person is going to walk out of here tonight actually having banned a book, and that is our director of schools. So if we don't want that on him, then we need to do our job, the job that the citizens elected us to do, that the state requires us to do, and put this item on the agenda for a vote. Otherwise, we are setting a precedent that these book challenges can be done in secret behind closed doors without transparency. So let's do our job tonight as a board and not skirt our responsibility. So again, I move to add to the agenda a discussion and or action to remove the book Lawn Boy by Jonathan Evison from all Sumner County schools. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Motion's been made in a second. And if you turn your light off, you're down there. Ms. Hawkins.
Before I vote on this, I want to know, has the book Lawn Boy been removed from all Sumner County schools?
Yes.
Is there a chance that that book can be resubmitted in the library? At some point in time, can the committee change its mind?
I think this is a good point that kind of leads us to where we were talking about not only our current obscene materials policy, which is 4.40012. In the current board policy, 4.403, that Mr. King referenced, both will have some impact moving forward in regard to state law change, AAMA, as well as processes for not only determining who removes a book, who doesn't remove a book in that process, but could also dynamically change how books are purchased within the system.
Okay,
And I don't think anyone here, I know I don't, I think that that's probably a good, healthy discussion that needs to occur and happen in a thoughtful way. And I think we're prepared to try to do that. So, we've had a lot of words thrown around about people breaking the law and policy and ask the attorney and all that sort of stuff. At the end of the day, I think internally in the system, we're all trying to balance what our current policy is. A lot of people infer what the policy says that it doesn't say. I took Mr. King's reading of the passages of the book Lawn Boy and his exact words in the meeting to be that he was concerned that the book violated the obscenity law of the state of Tennessee. He referenced that a few times in his emails to the entire board the following day after the meeting, threatening the board members and principals and librarians to be put in jail, I think, be arrested for violating the law. I think that was the exact terminology. All of you received that. I think that was the day after the meeting. But, to finish that thought, we took that as he thought the book was obscene. And so that's why we, inside the system, looked at it as an obscenity issue. So if it's obscene, there's no question about age appropriateness. It's obscene, it doesn't matter if it's kindergarten or 12th grade.
So obscene is removed immediately.
Yes.
I mean, there's no process.
And in the past several, in the time I've been here, we've had probably 3, if my memory serves me correctly. Those were brought to us board member parents, and they were dealt with the same way. The policy 4.40012 does not say, the obscenity policy, it does not say that the board will hear those. It also doesn't say that the board can't hear it. it's quiet on the matter. So is that something in the future when that policy along with 4.403 are rewritten? Is that something that the board wants to take up? Sure. Part of policy is to make sure that it's clearly identified enough in language that we can implement that correctly inside the system.
So at this point, the book is not in any of our Sumner County school libraries. It is not going to be going into any of our Sumner County school libraries, regardless of how we vote tonight.
Right.
It is gone.
Yes. And policy 4.40012, the obscenity policy, basically says, the last bullet point, that the board could look at this if they wish further action. I think we sent you the analysis of the two schools and the results of those committees. We sent you that information. So unless the board wishes further action, I don't know what else there is to do.
Hey, Ms. Hawkins, Mr. Daniels? Oh, you, okay. Mr. Lancaster.
Yeah, so the only issue I have, or the issue I have is there is confusion on what policy we remove the book under, to me. And that's the problem I have. And back in the October meeting, or the October study session, I specifically asked the question, if a book is removed by the school committees, does that mean it's removed to the district entirely? And I was told by you that that does not mean that necessarily. And so that is the concern, that I see when I see the two review committees reviewed it and said, hey, we want this out of our school. And I think that's a concern for the public, is it gone for good?
And I think I mentioned, I can rewatch the video, but I think I mentioned in that conversation when you made that point, I think I mentioned that's a good point, because we had a couple of different board members that said, well, if we do vote on a challenge book, does that mean it just comes out of the one school or all schools? Does that mean it can't be purchased at any other school in the future? And I think we had a conversation about, that's a good point that probably needs to be clarified, because we really haven't crossed that bridge before. So I think it makes 100% common sense that if you do ban it from one school because it's age inappropriate or it's obscene, then that would be consistent across every school, right? I just don't see how it would make any sense to not do that.
But that's not what our policy currently.
Our policy doesn't say one way or the other.
That's the issue I have,
Yeah.
and I think that the public has, is that's not what our policy currently states.
Right.
And therefore, it's kind of in limbo as if that is really what we have done.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Lancaster. Mr. King?
Yeah, so there's only one policy in our board manual that requires the formation of review committees, and that is board policy 4.403. And yes, I did originally request that we remove the book under the obscene materials policy, but I was denied that. And like you said, that book under that policy, it could have just been removed. But
How were you denied that? I'm just asking for clarification. I don't know how you were denied that.
well, the board voted it down. I sent an email and said, hey, I want this book removed. And under that policy, that was denied. And instead, we were told that it would be in accordance with board policy 4.403, and review committees were being formed at the schools and would render their decision after they fulfilled their responsibilities under board policy 4.403. So if we're just going to remove a book because it violates obscene materials, the obscene materials policy, my question is, why were review committees formed? Because that implements, and as you told the board, that you said we were going to follow board policy 4.403. Okay, and so there are no review committees under the obscene materials policy.
I think that email explicitly said, that was sent to the board, that we were going to use the process of 4.43, but we were taking your complaint under 4.0012. So go back and reread that because that's what it explicitly says.
Right.
So the policy 4.40012 does not say that we can't implement any process that we want. It doesn't say that you're going to form a committee, but it also doesn't say that we can't. So I think that's what, when you start looking into it, you're trying to say, well, it doesn't say you have to form a committee, but we have a lot of processes in the school district that are not explicitly spelled out in board policy.
Right, but you did tell us it was going to be in accordance with board policy 4.403.
No, sir. I didn't. We didn't.
I have your email right here where it says that. Now, a committee under that policy, the new state legislature gives review committees only recommendation authority. Now, they can recommend that a book violates the obscene materials policy, but they cannot make a decision. They have no authority to remove it under that. They can just give an opinion. State law, it does not matter if our policies have not been updated. We are still under and beholden to state law as it stands right now. And they say that those committees no longer have any authority to remove a book. They can say whatever they want. They can say it violates any policy in our manual, in our board policy manual. But we have to be the final decision maker under that policy. That is state law. When you implemented board policy 4.403, that meant that the process was now subject to the Age Appropriate Materials Act.
I think we're just disagreeing that I didn't implement 4.43. I took your complaint as an obscenity complaint.
Your comments. In accordance with board policy 4.403, the principals at each school are forming a committee to review the book. We will update the board after the principals and their committees, quote, fulfill their responsibilities under board policy 4.403. So, to me, something is clearly off. If they did not assess the book under that policy, then what responsibilities were they to fulfill under that policy? So, clearly, this was review committees were going to be formed under this policy. The obscene materials, you could have just removed the book without any questions asked. No review committees would have needed to be created, but yet that's the path that you took, and that's the process that you implemented. Now you're saying we're going to do an about face, and while that process, the end of that process requires the school board to vote, you're going to do an about face and now invalidate that process.
We took your complaint as an obscene material complaint.
I was not told that. You said that you took, hold on.
Right,
You
no,
said,
no, you hold on. Yield to the chair, sir. This is not on the agenda yet, and I have given Dr. Phillips and you a lot of leeway here, but you are debating what is not on the agenda yet. This is not on the agenda. It's up for the vote on the agenda, and you're discussing what's not on the agenda. So we need to go back to the original motion, and are we going to put it on the agenda or not?
okay.
And so I'm going to call for the vote. Any? You still have your light on?
Just restate, this is the vote on the amendment.
Yes.
Mr. King's amendment. So
To add this.
a yes vote would add his amendment language to the agenda.
Correct.
It would alter our current agenda, our proposed agenda. It would add Mr. King's amendment to the agenda.
That's correct.
Mr. Chairman, could we get Mr. Johnson to restate the amendment?
Yes, sir. The motion on the floor is to amend the agenda to add the discussion and/or action to remove the book Lawn Boy by Jonathan Evison from all Sumner County schools.
Can I ask a point of clarification just real quick?
Mr. Daniels.
Before we vote, currently, is this book on the shelves in any of our libraries?
No.
It's been removed based on your understanding or the obscene materials policy, which means it's not going back on the shelves, correct? Thank you.
Ms. Hayes.
No.
Mr. Lancaster.
Yes.
Ms. Andrews.
No.
Mr. King.
Yes.
Ms. Hawkins.
No.
Mr. Daniels? Mr. Wise?
No.
Mr. Gregory?
No.
Mr. Lacy? Did we lose him?
We did.
We'll move. Chairman Brewer?
No.
Motion fails.
Approve the agenda. We had a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote on that too. Mr. Johnson?
Mr. Lancaster? Ms. Andrews? Mr. King?
Yes.
Ms. Hawkins? Mr. Daniels? Mr. Wise?
Yes.
Mr. Gregory? We got Mr. Lacy back. Chris?
I do. I have it on the phone now. Do you want to? I don't think he heard what the where we are in the meeting.
Yes. Yeah, so, Mr. Lacy, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, we have moved on. Mr. King's motion failed, and we can record your vote later. The motion on the floor now is to adopt the regular agenda as presented. And so how do you vote?
Yes.
Chairman Brewer? Motion carries unanimously.
Next item on the agenda is adoption of the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve, Mr.
Motion
Chair.
approved by Mr. Wise. Second by Mr. Gregory. Any discussion? This is not where you, okay. Do a roll call vote on that as well?
Yes,
Mr. Johnson?
sir. Hang on, just let me catch up in here. Ms. Hayes? Mr. Lancaster? Ms. Andrews? Mr. King?
Yes.
Ms. Hawkins? Mr. Daniels? Mr. Wise?
Yes.
Mr. Gregory? Mr. Lacy?
Yes.
Chairman Brewer? Motion carries.
Next item on the agenda is discussion and interaction regarding the minutes of the October.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chair.
Get to you in just a second. Mr. Wise made the motion. Ms. Hayes made the second. Now we're open for discussion. Ms. Hawkins, I believe.
Yes, for those who don't have access to the minutes to see, there is one item in there that states that Mr. Daniels and I were both in attendance via remote on the telephone. But because our absences were not due to work, military service, or family emergency, I personally was helping my daughter move and her family move from Boston to Pennsylvania. And so this was a trip that had been planned for several months. Because it did not meet any of those requirements, we were not allowed to speak or vote in accordance with state law. So I did see everybody. I watched online. I was here virtually at the last voting meeting, but state law prohibited me from allowing to speak or vote.
Thank you, Ms. Hawkins. Mr.
Yeah,
Daniels?
I was essentially going to say the same thing. I was chaperoning my fifth graders' field trip to Land Between the Lakes, and I was fortunate to find probably the only spot with Wi-Fi at Land Between the Lakes to participate virtually. But as Ms. Hawkins said, we could tune in, we could listen, but because of state law, not school-related activities not being a reason to participate virtually, we could not vote. So thank you. So I'll be abstaining from voting on this.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels. Mr. Wise?
And I apologize for not being at our last meeting, and ditto to the last two comments.
All right. All right. Seeing no more lights on, Mr. Johnson?
Ms. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Lancaster?
Yes.
Ms. Andrews?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Ms. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Daniels?
I'll abstain.
Mr. Wise? Mr. Gregory? Mr. Lacy?
I hate to ask this, but what are we voting on? It's kind of hard to follow you guys.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We are voting to adopt minutes of the last meeting.
Yes.
Chairman Brewer?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next item on the agenda is recognition of our district AP scholars. Mr. Langford.
All right, first off, let me say thank you. Thank you for your patience. You know, I think one of the exciting things about AP, some of y'all may be in AP government now, or you will be in the spring. You just got an experience of what it's like to be part of the democratic process. We debate fervently and fiercely to represent the needs of our different constituencies across the county, and it's a very healthy and good part of American democracy. So I am glad that you got to see that, because we have a fantastic school board, and they all work very hard, and we're thankful for the representation that we have. I'd also like to say that it's a night of celebration. We had the largest number of AP scholars that we've had in the history of Sumner County. We had 213. Not all 213 are here because a large number of them have moved on to college, and we have a slide deck that we're going to share on social media to celebrate their accomplishments, because it really, one of my favorite times of the year is to see when the schools put the signs for fives up in yards. And you know, it's really exciting. I'm thankful for the schools that do that and for the celebrations that entail, and the great work that our principals, we have several that are here. A couple had to slip out because basketball season is started, and they have to be at games to chaperone and administer the games. But I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Stacy Cornett. She's going to share just a little bit about our AP scholars, and then we'll have our students come up so we can honor them.
Hello, and thanks everybody for coming out tonight and for being super patient with us. I hope you all got some refreshments outside, and I'm excited to get this started. So if you look on the board is just a description of the different recognitions that AP provides. AP scholars are granted to students who receive scores of 3 or higher on 3 or more of their AP exams. That means they did get college credit for 3 or more of their classes. Those graduating AP scholars with honors are granted to students who receive an average score of at least 3.25 and on all exams taken, and scores of 3 or higher on 4 or more of these exams. And then we have quite a few who are AP scholars with distinction. They've received an average score of at least 3.5 on all AP exams and scores of 3 or higher on 5 or more of these exams, which is a huge accomplishment. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the AP scoring system, you get anywhere from a 1 to a 5, with a 3, 4, and 5 resulting in college credit depending on the campus that you go to. We also have an AP seminar and research certificate. The student who received that graduated and is probably at work right now. I keep in close touch with her. We're going to call students up by class. So if those with Beach High School would come up, you're going to see students displayed anywhere from 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. Or last year's 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. So a lot of these have graduated. I'm going to call off everyone who is a current student with Sumner County Schools, but some of these have left. I'm not sure who has. But if you would go ahead, if you are a Beach AP scholar, if you'd go ahead and come up. We've got Emery Cates, John Christian, Katerina Contreras, Isabella Crow, Harper Deanna, Vincent Giovanelli, Claire Goggin, Hannah Madrigal, Kobe Smith, Cambria Ichikawa, Lily Kaiser are AP scholars.
Y'all have to come on up.
Yeah, we have something for you. So if you guys will come up and then stay in the center, we're going to take your picture as a group. Here we have several here tonight who are AP scholars with honors. We have Gracie Andrews, Nia Angelova, Hadley Brown, and Ava Clark. And we have one here tonight who also had AP Scholar with distinction, and that's Graham Huffine. And students tonight are receiving a Sumner County coin instead of a certificate. I think pretty neat memento. Carrollton High School next. We've got a lot of kids up here, but most of these were graduating seniors. Tonight we have Catherine Page here with us. She's still here? Yes.
You gotta take a lot of pictures, sorry. Dr. Becker, hang on.
All right, we now have our largest group from Hendersonville High School. We have Alexis Atkins, Bryce Bertotti, Courtney Betterton, Joseph Dye, Austin Eubank, Monique Ivan, Mario Hinesta, Hattie Martinek, Emerson Metter, Todd Melvin, Colin Miller, Samuel Pagoria, Luke Sherba, Ty Simon, Riley Sittler, Jake Smith, Larry Wong, and then those with honors, if I've called your name, go ahead and head up. Sadie Cooper, Lydia Dodd, Bryant Ferguson, Samuel O'Brien, Chase Taylor, Ashton Phelan, Jackson Upchurch, Olivia Vickers, Emma Westerman, Katie Wilkins, and Lillian Woodward. And then those who earned the AP Scholars with Distinction status is Rutaro Beth, Trace Brown, Sarah Corbin, Aaliyah Ihimua, Matthew Ivan, Sebastian Oliver, and Jack Seeger.
Mr. Connor, Bridge is yours. Come on up.
And we're lucky to have several principals out with us and assistant principals.
Yeah.
Yes, and several of our AP teachers. If you're an AP teacher, come out and get your picture with them. Yeah, I might have to. I had several of my kids ready.
Mr. Connor, come on.
Camera shot. All right. Congratulations, guys. All right, next we have Station Camp High School. We have Aiden Sparkman, James Beck, and McKenna Scott. I'll figure out the... We should have... Did McKenna leave? Or is McKenna still here? Yeah.
Spell the station.
Okay, yeah. We had 3 from Station Camp who are still current seniors in our school. Aiden Sparkman, James Beck, and McKenna Scott. McKenna was... Let's see. So you were here. All right, and our second largest group is with Merrill Hyde Magnet School. We had the following qualify as AP scholars: Jessica Alexander, Charles Condra, Braden Evans, Jeffrey Hickson, Benjamin Huff, Mac Jenkins, Sophia Curry, Caroline Lesueur, Mary McElwain, Fisher Robinson, Lily Sahihi, Courtney Vale, and Chase White. We had Aubrey King as an AP Scholar with distinction. And then the following were AP Scholars with honors: Catherine Abraham, Sophia Bricker, Colin Francel, Drew Martin, Alexander Mazaranu, and Andrew Watatascalpas. I did terrible. Now, we would love to honor our AP scholars before they head off to college, but AP tests are scored over the summer, with those being announced later in the summer, and usually we don't get reports of all those back until they're already gone to college. We have Portland High School. We have Abigail Barnett, Hannah Davis, Chad Warner, and Christina Kolobos. All right, we now have White House High School. We have Kaylee Anderson, Hallie Biggs, Griffin Carpenter, Cameron Dinkins, Gabriel McGuire, Jonathan Sutton, Dimitri Williams, Tucker McCormick, and Nathan Pardo. All right, that concludes our AP Scholar recognition. Y'all, these are some of the best kids, the brightest and the best we have, and we are so very proud. Thank you for coming out tonight, and thank you again for your patience for how long you've had to sit here. So have a great Thanksgiving, and you're free to leave. If you're here for the AP Scholar recognition, you can go ahead and
The board will be in recess for about 5 minutes to let our AP scholars leave if they'd like. Yeah. Meeting back to order. We're still under the recognition of delegations, and so let me get my little thing out here just right quick.
Mr. Chairman, may I say this? In recognition of these AP scholars, I'm well aware of more than one student, several matter of fact, who have been in college, well, within a month, a year and a half, and they'll be classified as juniors when they go back because of the AP classes, dual enrollment in Sumner County. That's what we're here for.
All right, it's time for hearing of delegations. Going to hear from the public. Before we do, most of you know when you come down, give your name and address for the record. Just reading from the policy itself. During recognition of the public, all comments are to be directed to the chair. You cannot call out any board member, school district employee, or other members of the public by name. Inflammatory, disruptive, or vulgar language that, in the opinion of the chairman, is intended to elicit a reaction from the crowd will not be tolerated. There will be no warnings. If these rules are not followed, the microphone will be cut off and the speaker will be instructed to take the seat. I don't think we're going to have any problem with that tonight. I think everybody's going to be very, very respectful, and we're going to have a really good meeting tonight. So with that being said, first one on the agenda is Patricia Smith. Miss Patricia, come on down. There's a wide button on that microphone. If you push it, it'll come on. Oh, there it goes. He cut it on for you. Okay.
Thank you so much. I am Patricia Smith. I live at 112 England Place in Hendersonville. And I was here last month, and I'm so happy to be able to be here again. Just as a reminder, I did commend this board on the education that my grandkids are getting. And I'm very pleased with your personnel and your policies and procedures. I have been a volunteer in your system. I hope to be able to do that again. I would like to request that you honor your own policies and procedures and your own very capable personnel. And I ask you to uphold the Jack Anderson Elementary Book Review Committee and keep a place inside me on the shelves for all students. It is my understanding that Jack Anderson personnel tried to work with the mom who complained about that book. And I want to commend them for trying to work with her to help her work through the concerns she had for her own child. I think that is a very commendable thing for them to do, and I would like to ask you to encourage all of your schools to continue to work with all families with the special needs of their own students and all their concerns. But I would also like to ask you to make sure that the rest of us are not bullied, that the rest of us still have access to this wonderful book. This book is critically acclaimed and award-winning, and it is art. It is poetry and visual art, and as we have seen last month, some people have very different reactions to art, and some people have very negative reactions sometimes, but please allow for my grandkids and others to experience what it's like to walk in another's shoes. I'm going to read a quote from the 19th century author George Eliot, the pen name of Marian Evans. She said, "The highest form of knowledge is empathy, which requires us to suspend our egos and live in another's world." That's what books do for us. My passion is working with and for kids and families with special needs, physical, emotional, behavioral, cultural, even racial, whatever they are. Sumner County has about 15% of people of color, and please serve us all. This evening, elementary students from our county may be attending a memorial service for a Gallatin High School student who was tragically killed this last weekend. I understand that some elementary schools students may have witnessed this killing. This book, A Place Inside Me, would be a wonderful resource for these students. So I urge you to stay the course, stick with your process for challenged books. Please do not be intimidated by people who might be angry. As a grandparent of students in our schools, I am so thankful that I have a school board that values processes to protect the interests of all of our students and all of our families in our school system. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. One thing I failed to mention just a minute ago, moving forward here, is you have 5 minutes, up to 5 minutes, to speak on an agenda item. So that being said, Tyler Creasy would be next.
Good evening. My name is Tyler Creasy. I live at 397 Henry Harris Road, Westmoreland. I would first like to respond to the opinion posited at the last board meeting that we as a county and librarians are somehow controlled and beholden to the ALA. I can only speak for myself, though I think others would agree with me. But beyond looking to see which books are award winners each year, I do not consult the ALA when I purchase books for the library. And once I see the list of award winners, I vet them for appropriateness for my students, as I do with all the books I purchase, to the best of my ability. Now, regarding the decision you will need to make tonight on the book, A Place Inside Me, I strongly urge you to not ban this book. Respectfully, there is nothing wrong with the text of the poem, and while certain illustrations, some of which were falsely described at the last meeting, may be unsettling for a few, they may very well represent the reality of some students in our county. As a side note, the author, Zetta Elliott, dedicated the book when she wrote it to Zion, a boy from Fort Worth, who at the age of 8 witnessed his aunt be killed by police in a welfare check gone tragically wrong while the two were playing video games. As I told my board member when he asked if I thought the book was dark and not suitable for young children, not every book is for everyone, but every book is for someone. Sadly, there are young children in our diverse county who may be in situations in which this book would resonate with them. As a parent of a student currently in Sumner County and a school librarian in the county in my 30th year as an educator, I firmly believe for us to begin censoring books puts us on a very slippery slope. If we ban this book because a handful of parents find it offensive, are we to turn around and ban something else because a different group of parents are equally offended? I attended a previous study session where someone made an excellent point when bringing up To Kill a Mockingbird. The 1961 Pulitzer Prize winner is a favorite of mine as well. However, there are those who find it offensive and would wish to have it removed from the library shelves. In fact, this classic remains one of the most consistently challenged books. If we as a county ban A Place Inside of Me, what's next? Mockingbird? There are other ways to deal with this issue, and I beseech you to collaborate with the librarians in the county to understand how these issues can be managed in a way that is beneficial to all. To quote a line from the aforementioned classic, you never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view, until you climb inside his skin and walk around. Books help students do this. They help build empathy for people from different backgrounds and in different situations than their own. And in conclusion, in making the decision tonight, I ask you to carefully consider the feeling of all stakeholders, as well as the Pandora's box that could be opened as a result of a decision to ban this title. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Creasy. Next one is Melody Vaudry.
Hello, I'm Melody Vaudry from Hendersonville, 3517 New Hope Road. And the book has a lot about BLM in it. It's all visual. And if you know what BLM is, and you've read about it, it causes division, hate, and they want to destroy our lives and our children's lives and our schools, and they want to control us. It is a Marxist communist organization. They have been violent and burned up many of our cities. destroyed history in America by tearing down our statues. It's all part of the Great Reset. And in order to start the Great Reset, you have to tear down what's been made already. And that's what they're doing. I have 2 black grandchildren. I do not want them to see me differently. This book is geared towards not liking policemen, making them look bad. They're holding clubs they're going to hit people with. And I'm asking you to vote no to putting this book in our schools, in our public schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vaudry. Next one is Karen Snyder.
My name is Karen Snyder, and I live at 1005 Ryder Drive in Gallatin. I don't know a lot of you, so I did some background investigation, and I discovered that the majority of you all consider yourself Christians. With that in mind, I'd like to remind you that we are in a cosmic battle between God and Satan. God, on one hand, wants us to choose Him and live righteous and holy lives, and Satan comes but to steal, kill, and destroy. He destroys individual lives, he destroys families, he destroys communities, and he destroys nations. I had a lot of other things that I wanted to say, but I'm going to kind of cut it short. It was still within the 5 minutes, but I'm talking to this book, A Place Up Inside of Me. The books and curriculum that are being foisted on our children will be the crack in the door for a lot of children to begin to explore behavior for which they can't possibly comprehend the detrimental impact it will have on their lives. And their parents, many of whom will have no idea they've been exposed to this, will wonder why their children have suddenly changed into a depressed, conflicted, or rebellious child, because they cannot handle it. It's being put on them at an age when they cannot handle it, they cannot understand it. I want to remind you, when you're making decisions that will affect our children's future and ultimately the future of our nation, whether it's these books or curriculum that promote critical race theory that pits white against black and divides our country, or materials that disparage law and order, or social emotional learning that produces a Marxist hive mind, all of this is Satan's plan to steal, kill, and destroy God's perfect plan for us. God places a higher degree of responsibility on pastors, teachers, and leaders to do and teach what is right, as defined by God's Word. So when you stand before God on Judgment Day, if you have implemented and encouraged materials in a curriculum that promotes Satan's agenda, what will you say when He asks you why you cause these children to stumble? Many of us know from Matthew 18, the scripture that says it's better for a millstone to be hung around a person's neck and for them to be thrown into the sea than to cause a child to stumble. But do you know what the verse following it says? Woe to the world because of the things that cause people to stumble, but woe to the person through whom they come. I would ask you to vote no on this book and any other curriculum and book that would impose anything on our children and put on them things that are beyond their capacity to handle at young ages and even up to teenage ages. That is contrary to God's Word. Vote your conscience, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Snyder. I'm sorry. I'll get my glasses on for this one. Monique, I'm not going to attempt your last name. Ritterbeck? Ritterbeck. All right. Come on down. Thank you.
My name is Monique Ritterbeck, and I'm from 2525 Nashville Pike. Newly
migrated here from California. I have a master's in education. I taught high school English, and I taught sixth grade literature. So what I have for you today is a response to a place inside of me, a piece that I've written called Within. I think this will help to best convey my message to you. Am I just a pigment in your imagination? What if I speak my mind without hesitation? Will representation matter if you only let me be a character of, not the imago Dei that I was meant to be? Black, 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 black matters. Critical theories, media chatter. How many identities can you fracture with well-taught fear and George Floyd's cadaver? Put a black kid on the cover of a book, you say. First teach them all cops are bad in each and every way. As all the black kids read the book, the one that looks like them, little by little they'll start to think they can't have blue-eyed friends. Because what happens when you pick your books based solely upon skin, the outside starts to matter more than everything within. I taught To Kill a Mockingbird for 4 years. This book is not To Kill a Mockingbird. To Kill a Mockingbird will stand the test of time. If you go on to YouTube, you'll see the author read the book. She heralds Black Lives Matters before she gets into her story. This book is propaganda, and put in the hands of little kids who don't have a sense of the political system and the greater world, they're just going to believe you. You know, I have a 3-year-old nephew. He thought a stick on the ground was one of those veggie sticks from a bag, and he was going to eat it unless I stopped him. Okay, so developmentally, these kids are not ready for this book. And from my personal, what I look like, what my brothers look like, what my dad looks like, when you teach a kid fear, you are crippling them for the rest of their life. And I do not believe in banning books, but I do believe in protecting children. And if you put something before a child that causes them to fear other people, to not be able to connect to humanity, and to feel like they are less than, if you have any messaging that, if you continue to give them that messaging, that is not loving, and that is not education. That is propaganda. And so today, knowing that several of you are Christians, I want to just confirm, to say to you that you have every right to ban this book, because it's not education, it's propaganda. And I just thank you so much for listening to my remarks today, and God bless you.
Thank you. Next one on the list is Lisa Bracco. Did I say that right?
I'm Lisa Bracco. I live at 296 Lake Terrace Drive, on the lake for over 30 years. Both my children, 31 and 27, have successfully graduated through our school system, gone on to college. One is an assistant principal in Antioch, where they serve children from 29 nations. And my younger son is in Knoxville, and he just successfully started as a physician assistant. I have a high degree of respect for Sumner County schools. A high degree. It's the reason I picked Hendersonville to move there a long time ago. Okay, so this is my first time here, and I appreciate you having me. And I want to talk, can you hear me okay? I want to obviously talk about the book we're all talking about, A Place Inside of Me, described in the following way on Amazon. A powerful, affirming poem by an award-winning author, Zeta Elliott. A black child explores his shifting emotions throughout the year. There's a place inside of me, a space down deep inside of me, where all my feelings hide. Summertime is filled with joy, skateboarding, and playing basketball until his community is deeply wounded by a police shooting. Sadly, we're seeing this all over our country. As fall turns to winter, then spring, fear grows into anger, pride, and peace. In her stunning debut, illustrator Noah Denman articulates the depth and nuances of a child's experiences following a police shooting through grief and protests, healing and community, with washes of color as vibrant as his words. Here is a groundbreaking narrative that can help all readers, children and us adults alike, to talk about our feelings hiding deep inside of us. My question, with all respect for all of you, because I'm not out doing this work you're doing, why would you not want all children to read and learn from this book? The book is centered on a reality that so many children in our country have to face. Sumner County, as we know, is predominantly white. My kids, as I told you, went to Sumner County schools. They never had to worry about representation. All the books in history they learned were also predominantly centered on white people. Most learning standards in this country are Eurocentric, meaning they focus on history and the experiences of people with European ancestry. Why is anyone complaining about the inclusion of Afrocentric literature? People have claimed on social media, school boards, and in the legislature that books like this are divisive. Have you read any of them? I honestly haven't read the book. I ordered 10, they didn't come on time. But I looked at it on the internet because I wanted to read it before I came here tonight. If you did, you would realize that books like this are actually inclusive and provide students from all backgrounds with both windows into the experiences of people who do not look like them, and mirrors so that they can see themselves represented and reflected in their learning. Every child deserves to see themselves reflected across the curriculum. We must choose intentionally diverse texts that allow students to read and learn both the successes and struggles of people who look like them and people that do not look like them. Not only should this book be allowed to stay, I would ask and encourage you to look for more. I thank each and every one of you for listening to me, for your time here tonight. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bracco. Next one is Rick Yamin.
Hello, my name is Rick Yamin. I live on Carrington Road in Hendersonville. My two boys attended Sumner County schools from the time they were in pre-kindergarten through graduation from Station Camp High School in 2013-2017. They have both gone on to be successful and productive members of our community, and in large part that's due to the quality education and the quality educators that were in Sumner County schools and that educated them. So what happened? What has happened from 2013 to 2007 and 2017 that our educators were so good then, and now all of a sudden we're questioning them and we're villainizing them? I don't understand it. Why are they being attacked? A place inside of me is not only appropriate, but it is also very relevant to the world that we currently live in. It is vital that our students see diversity, and especially those students that are marginalized. It is important for them to be able to have access to books and other material that they can identify with. It is our moral responsibility, and as a school board, it is your obligation to provide a free, appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment for all students. Taking this book away denies children of color that right. I encourage you to keep this book in circulation in our public school libraries. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yaman. Next one is Julia Garrett, I think is the name.
My name is Julia Garnett from 115 Deer Ridge Lane, Hendersonville, Tennessee. I'm a junior at Hendersonville High School, and I'm here to defend the book, A Place Inside of Me. Once again, I'm here tonight as a voice for the people who can't be here or don't feel comfortable speaking. I'm here as a voice for the youth because unfortunately, in these times, it feels like we must stand up for ourselves. I'm here because I am sick and tired of the censorship that has been occurring in our schools. We cannot continue to breed hate and lack of education. A Place Inside of Me is not a quote, an American book. It's a book about love, hope, and unity, and it certainly embodies the values of America. What's really sad is that the adults that are supposed to lead us and make decisions that impact my future have failed us. This is what's un-American. The fact that a certain board member and these, quote, concerned parents are allowed to successfully target books that allow children to feel heard and represented is disgraceful. I'm begging you to vote on these books like your daughter wants to check it out because she saw that it had other people of color in it. Vote on this book like your son came home from school crying because kids on the playground told him they wouldn't be his friend because of his skin tone. This might not be your reality, but it is certainly the reality of some families in Sumner County. Check your privilege. Recognize how lucky we are and the opportunities that are afforded to us for some things we can't control. Your decision will set the precedent for other books in Sumner County and quite possibly surrounding areas. This is a plea not to censor history from the ears of Sumner County's children, because these restrictions are what truly breed division. I would like to add the idea that maybe we have to, quote, tear things down in order to build up a more empathetic and kind society. Maybe we have to tear down what's already built because it was founded on racism, homophobia, and sexism. Because, I'm sorry, but prayers, group hugs, and books about chickens aren't going to fix everything. We need real representation in all of our schools to teach acceptance at a young age. A Place Inside of Me mentions real things that happen to real people. It breaks down emotions we all feel in ways that young readers can understand. Yes, some things are sensitive to learn about, but how are children supposed to learn empathy from just one single cis white male perspective? We must diversify our education or we are doomed to breed intolerance, confusion, and inequality. Please vote for A Place Inside of Me to remain in school libraries to show that the minorities of Sumner County are supported in our education system. I have the best teachers. I had the best teachers from Benny Bills Elementary School and Hawkins Middle School. I am confident that these teachers will educate amazing young minds and teach kindness and empathy and love. They will be there for the children of Sumner County, and they will do an amazing job at teaching the many perspectives of the world, even those that are difficult to learn and understand. And if they are just given the chance, they will teach our children. Because you might not understand what it's like to grow up in a world without learning about people who look like you, act like you, or love like you. But as a queer person, I certainly understand this, and so do so many of the different families of Sumner County. Vote for us. Vote for the children of Sumner County. Vote for the future of Sumner County and this country. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Garnett. Next is Pat Hinsdale.
My name is Pat Hinsdale, and I live at 146 River Chase, Hendersonville. I am a Christian, a parent, a citizen, and a grandparent of 8. I sincerely want to take this moment to thank the school board members who have the courage, or who have had their courage and support in this fight against this obscenity that is so obvious in our schools. You are to be applauded. The statistics are 11% of students are in private school, they're homeschooled, or they have tutors. The other 89% I'm here to fight for. I am here to fight because I feel that I have a solemn obligation to speak up when I see a grave injustice. Our school children are being exposed to unimaginable and inappropriate sexually explicit books. The law states in Tennessee it is unlawful to loan or make available to a minor any book that contains accounts of sexual excitement or sexual conduct. Please raise your hand
Ms.
if you
Hensel?
do not want to.
Ms. Hensel, let me interrupt you just a second. If you would, make your comments to the chair. And also, you said you wanted to talk about a place inside of me. So if you would, please stay on that subject.
Well, my point is that books like this hurt our children. And I wanted to ask the audience and the school board members, if they don't want to hurt a child, would you please raise your hands? Nobody? Oh, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This is a question applied to the school board, but nobody raised their hands. That's unfortunate. These deplorable books are hurting our children. Would you read these books or this book to your children or your grandchildren? I wouldn't. How about you? How you vote on this book or any other book like it will reveal your true identity. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Hensel. Jessica McCarnes.
Hello, my name is Jessica McCarnes. I live here in Gallatin with my husband and our 3 children. I spoke here at the last meeting regarding this book and the curriculum, and since that time, as you all know, I have decided that it is in the best interest and protection of my children to remove them from Sumner County schools. Much of what I'm about to say I said in the last meeting, but I feel it's worth repeating. So for those who were not in attendance, so please forgive my repetition. I'll start by stating again that as a Sumner County resident, born and raised, and having gone to public schools here myself, what I see happening in our school system today is completely disgraceful. Lawn Boy, I'm going to mention, is a sexually explicit book that belongs nowhere near a school library, much less anywhere near a child under the age of 18. Even as an adult, I found it grotesque and completely inappropriate. It is also so incredibly hard to believe that this book was even voted upon in our county or that committees were created in the first place to review them, notwithstanding the fact that it actually made it into a Sumner County school library to begin with. Also, the book A Place Inside of Me is not an appropriate book for a school library. It promotes the BLM organization and depicts police in a very negative light. The poetry is dark and heavy with negative emotional content. You can't possibly believe that a typical kindergartner or first grader can read this content effectively or relate to the emotions it portrays. This is clearly a picture book that aims to promote an agenda that is completely age inappropriate and not teaching anything of value to a child who looks at it. For those of you who use the excuse that we need a book like A Place Inside of Me to promote diversity in our schools, every one of us in this room were uniquely, wonderfully, and fearfully made by our Heavenly Father so that we are all special and exceptional in our own way. We were not created to be put into labels or categories based on our physical appearance. Children who are made to believe that they are to be looked at or treated differently by the color of their skin or any other physical characteristic for that matter are taught to think that way, whether by what they've been exposed to in society, in their school, or even, unfortunately, in their home. So long as we continue to make that the focus, it will never change. It will continue to encourage our children and youth to see these as features that divide us rather than what actually unites us. My first grader, she's a blonde-haired, blue-eyed child. Her best friend for the last couple of years is what the world categorizes as a black girl. Neither my daughter or her friend decided to be friends based on the color of their skin. They were both adorable, sweet, playful, silly little girls that are drawn to each other because of those characteristics that they share. and that is why they enjoy spending time together. Neither of them see skin color as the basis of their friendship, and it is preposterous to insinuate that children are naturally inclined to think this way. As I mentioned in the last meeting, why the need to move away from the basics of education, such as reading, writing, arithmetic, factual American history? Aside from the legality issue, whereas the morality and ethical principles of operating as a neutral environment where all children and parents are given the same level of respect and accommodation? Why is it that the parent who wants their child to be exposed to violence, death, murder, critical race theory, sexual immorality, gender fluidity, the breakdown of the nuclear family, suicide ideation, yes, even cannibalism, I can go on, it's given the advantage over those who don't want this for their children? Why not remove these materials from the school and simply direct those parents to the countless free resources outside the school they can access on their own with their child? Children are a blessing and a gift from God, filled with innocence, laughter, and joy. For this reason, as adults, we are expected to set boundaries for them until they are mentally, emotionally, and spiritually mature enough to handle being introduced to these types of situations. You all are in a highly persuasive and impactful position, and what you do and every decision you make on this school board will influence the lives of tens of thousands of children in this county. You have a duty and an obligation to protect them. It is shameful what Sumner County schools are allowing our children to be exposed to. I ask that each of you please do the right thing by seeking impartiality and honor the role you are elected to do. Please vote to remove this book.
Thank you, Ms. McCarnes. Angarid Philip Jones. I know I'm killing these names, I'm sorry.
Good evening. My name is Angharad Irving Jones Phillips from Hendersonville. I'm here this evening in my capacity as a mother, an educator, a mentor, and an immigrant. I want the board, you, to ultimately remove, not ban, but remove, the book titled A Place Inside of Me from the county's school libraries, and place it in the public libraries. This is a tale of two sides. Both sides believe that their viewpoint is resounding and equivocally right. Both sides are divided by politics, wokeness, and faith. Both sides want to beat each other. This much is clear. And you have the unbiased responsibility to champion one cause against the other. However, the issue before us tonight rises above these facets and should revolve around one simple and important issue, and that is what is right and what is appropriate for a child, including my child. Of course, what is right for one child may not be right for the other, and this is where we have the deadlock. Last month, during this meeting, I was told that a lot of children have suffered in one capacity or another with abuse, and that this book helps children with empathy, sympathy, and understanding. My argument against this opinion is this book encourages discourse, not sympathy. These illustrations pushes a violent narrative, not unity. I agree that some children have experienced trauma and difficulties, yet that does not need to extend itself to and expose others to it, does it? By exposing my child to this book, how does this help that child who has experienced trauma? In times of need and distress, I have taught my child to run to the police if needed, as it gives her a sense of security, knowing that someone will help her if mummy and daddy can't. This book illustrates that the police are bad guys and not to be entrusted. My daughter's brother, grandfather, uncle, and cousins are and were all police officers. The Black Lives Movement, which this book oozes and highlights, is not considered a role model piece of literature when its followers actively burn down communities and its founders defraud donors to the sums of tens of millions of dollars. This is a fact. The Black Lives Matter group perpetrates and encourages acts of violence with terrible social and community consequences for all, including children. I know that everyone will agree that black voices in literature, as well as other minorities, is a positive and important matter. However, I will prevent my daughter from reading and or viewing this book because she is not yet prepared to discuss and or understand certain worldly experiences. It is my role and responsibility to protect and educate her on all these matters, and not for the school to actively push ideologies and viewpoints onto her, contrary to mine. As a minority in this community, I am saddened that my voice is not heard as loud as some, and that my opinions are disregarded by people who claim to be tolerant and accuse my...
Sorry, Ms. Phillips, your time's up. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Next is Trey Pauler. Trey Pauler. Tracy Pauler, I'm sorry.
My name's Tracy Parker. I live at 1110 Woodvale Drive in Gallatin. I'm not an artist in handwriting, you know, I type a lot. I'm speaking mainly tonight as a parent, as a 30-year educator, and as a 25-year school librarian about just the general idea of one group of people getting to decide what is appropriate for everyone. I gave each of you a copy of Ban This Book by Alan Gratz. It is told from a fourth grader's perspective, and I would really encourage you to read it. It really kind of gives us as adults a little bit of perspective, and the ending is awesome. So that's what I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Parker. Wes Dunkel.
Hello, I'm Wes Dunkel. I live at 321 Buffalo Run in Goodlettsville. Here we are again. I wish it didn't have to be, but it is. Anyway, I will exercise a bit of courtesy. Maybe that some didn't at the last meeting. If you have young children, you may want to tune out for 10 seconds. I promise it won't be obscene or anything like that. At the last school board meeting, we were told that kids were impressionable and their innocence should be preserved because they believed in Santa Claus, the Tooth Fairy, and the Easter Bunny. And that's true, but eventually they figure it out. They start thinking critically and follow the facts, like Santa Claus can't fit down the chimney, reindeer don't fly, rabbits don't lay colored eggs, and the Tooth Fairy, isn't that breaking and entering? Some adults think there are no American... Excuse me. Some adults don't think there are no American flags. Some adults think that there are no American flags in this book. That the flag depicted on top of a van is the flag of Cuba. That it's part of some left-wing conspiracy to turn kindergartners into communists. It's a battle of good and evil. I don't know. Anyway, But eventually they start thinking critically and follow the facts. The facts are there are 2 American flags in this book. And it's not the Cuban flag, it's the flag of Puerto Rico, a territory of the United States. When we stop making decisions based on facts, we not only look ignorant, we stop being a functioning democracy. Excuse me, I was up late last night, like many of you, at the county commission meeting. And speaking of democracy, a commissioner last night called this book un-American. Un-American. You know what I think is un-American? Springing resolutions and book challenges on the public without notice because you're afraid of a reaction. That's un-American. Reading material in front of children without context, without notice, just to score political points, that is un-American. Removing books just because we don't like the message, that is un-American. Some are afraid of this book, not because it's un-American, but because it's too American. It's the American experience for someone with skin color that's different than ours. That's too American for some people, clearly. Protesting, can't have that, that's too American. Feeling afraid, yearning for freedom, that's too American. A book showing people of different colors and faiths and races coming together to mourn a loss, that's too American. And then feeling hopeful, inspired to overcome, that's too American. For a student to come up here and be vulnerable, be different, show that courage to be human in front of everyone. I heard many mutter as she spoke. Apparently, that's too American for some people. This is too American. I appreciate your concern and your I appreciate you taking the time to vote on this again. I hope we don't have to come back here for another book that's of this level. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dunkel. Karen Reagan.
Hello, I am Karen Reagan, and I live at 1012 Goshentown Road in Hendersonville. I want to thank you all for your service and your willingness to serve on our school board, and I appreciate your service and your time. Removing a book from a public school library, nor asking that it be placed in an age-appropriate shelf or access is not a request, nor is it the same as banning a book. Public school libraries are not public libraries. John Q. Public cannot walk in off the street and check out books from our school libraries. Schools are institutions that we place in trust to educate our children, not to entertain or indoctrinate or sway their thinking. The book, A Place Inside Me, was discussed last month, and of course tonight. It's a beautiful poem. It was written, I understand, like 20 years ago, and it's an excellent poem that in a book of poetry would just be an excellent teaching tool for a parent to be reading to a child at any age. Sadly, it seems that not as many parents read and teach and talk about books, poetry, or even the Bible as much as it did in our previous generations. But there was communications in the home. But sadly, too, this beautiful poem has been presented to us all wrapped in pretty paper as a standalone book, not just in a book of poetry, but a standalone book. And all that pretty wrapping paper depicts images that are not age appropriate. The poem is beautiful, but the wrapping paper is not. The images are not age appropriate for kindergartners or first grade students. No kindergartner or first grade student is going to be able to read that poem. The text is way above their level, and all the pretty wrapping paper, the pictures, depicts images designed, I feel, to culturally sway and message fear and bias against a civilized society. It claims to be age appropriate. But no, the images, not the words, the images are unnecessarily and inappropriately, they stir emotions in a child when they're at school, not with their parents, away from their parents, but when they're in school. So it's the parents' job to address, acknowledge, and guide a child's emotional growth to maturity, not the school systems. So just please teach our children to read. And I do wish that you all would at least vote to remove this book to a more age-appropriate level. High schoolers, fine, but not in the suggested level of kindergarten and first grade. Let our schools focus on teaching our young students to read. They can't read at that level. Just because a book is said to be diverse does not mean that it is age appropriate. Let's see, one other thing, I'm sorry, I lost my place. I heard it referred to as a great resource for students, but it's not a great resource for kindergartners and first graders. It's a great resource for parents. Parents are the primary resource for our students. The school system is a resource, but it's the parents. If you want to help the kids, help the parents. Kindergartners and first grade students cannot stand up for themselves. That's why we have parenting, And again, teach our students to read, but don't flash images that are not age appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reagan. Darren Brown.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Doreen Brown. I actually live in White House, but I have been a Sumner County librarian for 20 years. There are a handful of guarantees in this life, and differing opinions is one of them. Indeed, I would say it is a necessary thing in a democratic society. This meeting is filled with anger, resentment, misunderstanding, and fear. I would like us to pause for just a moment and consider the scope of our actions here this evening, and to reflect upon the real issues. The role of the school librarian, students and their freedom to read, the rights of parents, and the school board policies. To begin, we, the school librarians, ask that the public stop harassing us. We are doing our jobs to the best of our abilities. I'm sure that most of you are aware that the school librarians here in Sumner County all hold master's degrees in library and information science. We are educated professionals, and we take our job seriously. We strive to assist our students in finding books that fit their needs and their interests. We read book reviews, we talk to other librarians, we collaborate with our teachers, and we listen to our students. We painstakingly and lovingly curate a collection that will meet the needs and appeal to all of our students, regardless of economics, ethnicity, religious beliefs, or gender. Many of these titles are purchased to support and enrich the curriculum. Others are just broadly informational, and others are just stories for you to read for pleasure. Our goal is to grow readers. Ready access to a wide variety of reading materials increases the chances that our students can find themselves in their library pages. That is their right. This helps to ensure that our students become lifelong readers, are capable of learning things by themselves, making critical decisions, and informed opinions. Now, any individual or group has a right to voice their concerns about a school textbook or a school library book. I think it's important to remember that library books are not curricular. They're extracurricular. They're not part of the curriculum. I think there's some confusion about that. Students pick these books to read because they want to, not because we tell them to. It is a parental right to have a say in what your child may or may not read. But it is not your right to tell other parents what their students can read. Sumner County has a policy in place for addressing these challenges. It is under review at the moment, and I'm sure you are all aware that from the state level, the Textbook Commission is in the process of compiling guidelines for across the state for all school librarians. Those guidelines have not been issued, so we are still relying upon the current board policies, both the obscene materials and the reconsideration. The policy states that a form, the reconsideration form, should be filled out by everyone who issues a challenge regarding a book. It is filled out in its entirety, and it asks that any book be read completely before you issue your complaint. A panel will convene at the school level to review the book. Their decision should be final. They do have the right to appeal that decision, which is where you all come into place. Jack Anderson followed the board's procedure. They convened a panel and they voted to keep the book on the shelves. As is the right, the parent has challenged that. It is my understanding that if they do not appreciate and agree with your choice for what happens to this book, they do have the right to take it to the state level. Also my understanding that the state can refuse to hear that appeal. What anyone thinks about this book does not really concern me. Okay? What does affect me and does concern me is maintaining the integrity of the board's policies and procedures. Policies exist to help us navigate these passionate discussions. And I urge you, the school board members, to uphold your own policies and stand by the decision reached by the reconsideration panel.
Sorry, Ms. Brown, your time's up. Thank you. Joanna Daniels.
Hi there, my name is Joanna Daniels, and I live at 152 North Shadow Haven Way, Hendersonville. And thank you so much for having public comment tonight and for being here, and thank you for your service. So I want to talk tonight, obviously, about a place inside of me. So, of course, we're going to have differing opinions. However, I want to bring you back to what is the purpose of school. The purpose of school is to teach child to read, to write, to do arithmetic, and to learn the laws of our land. And so this really has to do with reading. It has to do with educating our children. As you know, right now, Sumner County reading proficiency is at about 50% or below. So we're really not doing really good at reading proficiency here in Sumner County. Coming from California, you know, unfortunately, I think we're about the same as California. You might be slightly better, but that's like coming from a C to a C+. So really, this book should be about whether it teaches or not. I want to read a few statistics. 40% of all nerve fibers connected to the brain are linked to the retina. Almost 50% of our brain is involved in visual processing. More of our neurons are dedicated to vision than all other four senses combined. 90% of information transmitted to the brain is visual. 75% of marketers rely on visuals in their social media messaging. 56% of companies queried use infographics, and 84% who've used them consider them the medium effective. Everything is visual. Early choice pediatric therapy has found that once a child enters school, about 75% of the classroom activities are directed through visual pathways. Vision, visuals is really what is really important to a child. That is what, at 6 years old, a child cannot read A Place Inside of Me. This has nothing to do with reading. This book has everything to do with the visuals. And these visuals are inappropriate for schools. BLM is extremely controversial. BLM is an anti-nuclear family, and many leaders have said many racist remarks. A professor at college was suspended because he spoke out against Black Lives Matter, and he was a black man. So obviously BLM has a lot of influence right now, and not in a good way. The visuals in this book do not do anything but cause trauma. Trauma with police brutality, BLM, and trauma has been proven to impede in the learning capability of children. Visual trauma can have an impact on reading. These images create trauma and therefore create a barrier to reading, to learning. How are children supposed to process their feelings and learn at the same time? This is wrong. How dare the school put a book in circulation that causes traumatic feelings that could possibly impede learning? That is irresponsible of the schools. If we are to send our kids to learn, to read, then you should remove any barriers that would possibly cause a problem to them learning. You know, empathy is learned at home. It is not learned at school, and it should not be the teacher's job to teach empathy. I live with a black man. I've been with him for 21 years. Okay, my daughter-in-law is Chinese. I cannot walk in either of their shoes. And yes, I can empathize with them, but guess what? I'm an adult. I can now think critically. At 6 years of age, empathy needs to be taught at home, not at school with traumatic visuals in a book. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Daniels. Holly Cruz.
Hello, my name is Holly Cruz, and I live at 3275 Hartsville Pike in Castallion Springs. Good evening, school board members. I would first like to, again, thank you for being here and having the open comment and allowing us to come voice our feelings on your agenda items. Again, to remind you, I am mother to Hazel and Rosie, who attend Benny Bills Elementary here at Sumner in Sumner County. I'm here tonight to again ask you to keep the book A Place Inside of Me in our school libraries. I would like to focus this evening a little bit on the illustrations. It seems that that is a common theme. And I would like to address the fact that these illustrations are being deemed as not age appropriate for our elementary school students. One illustration that was called out by the parent who filed the complaint stated that BLM is a known terrorist organization and they spew hate. I have read the book. I obviously am wearing my Black Lives Matter shirt. I love the phrase Black Lives Matter. To me, it is a very deeply personal meaning, and I asked my friends and family to reflect upon what does that saying mean to you. When you see the phrase Black Lives Matter, when you hear somebody say Black Lives Matter, what does that mean to you? It seems like it's being framed very negatively, and so I wanted to reframe the thought behind the phrase Black Lives Matter. And I wanted to share just a couple of those thoughts from my friends and family. Black Lives Matter to me means exactly what it says. Black Lives Matter, and they do. It's a sentiment to remind folks that equality matters, that Black unity is important, and a harsh reminder that we have to do better. Another friend stated that Black Lives Matter means to me is that literally my Black life matters in a world where it's often not valued. When I'm being judged in my everyday life just by the color of my skin and nothing else, it doesn't mean that anyone's life matters above mine or that I'm a priority. It simply means as a Black woman, I do matter too in a world where it doesn't seem that way. I just want my people to be treated as fairly as everyone else. I believe Black Lives Matter stands for equality, not saying that Black lives are more important than another race, but just as important as every other race. For me, it stands for backing your fellow person that deserves the same opportunities, quality of life, respect, love, and justice. Our country has a long history of treating Black people as less than, from slavery to lynchings to Jim Crow to police brutality. It is a society that has long shown that those with lighter skin are more valued. Black Lives Matter is a reminder that Black lives have value, beauty, and joy too. Again, I want to speak to the elementary level books that are being challenged. And again, as a mother to Hazel and Rosie, when you look at two books that have been challenged in our schools, I'm not sure if you can see that. Maybe I need to turn my phone a little bit brighter. But there's a common theme. There's a common theme. And it feels scary. It feels scary to be a parent of an elementary age student too, because these books are controversial, these books are questionable. It doesn't feel good. It really, really doesn't feel good. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cruz. Sue McPherson.
Good evening. My name is Sue McPherson, and I am a retired teacher. I taught 40 years at Hendersonville High School, and I also taught several years at Union University before my retirement at night school, and then after I retired. I am now working with some summer camps, aviation camps, and still highly connected with education, which I am very proud of Sumner County. I'm very proud of the things we've done. And I was really inspired tonight when I saw all these AP students up here receiving all their accolades, because I too had taught honored students. What made me feel very, very good that that is continuing to go. And I want to thank you for considering these books, because we need to keep our education and the materials that we expose these students to in our classrooms and in our libraries at a very high level, both academically and spiritually. During COVID, we sanitized our kids, we masked our kids, we social distanced, and the outside we kept very clean, very pure. We want to keep the inside the same way. And that's why we urge you to look very carefully at these books. And I thank you very much for actually removing the book Lawn Boy from the libraries. I feel it was very inappropriate. The book in question, A Place Inside of Me, is one that I feel is not appropriate for the age level to which it's being presented. The fight that we're seeing to a great degree, and as I sat and listened to many of these people, it's more of a political ideology that's at stake here for them, rather than just the content or the pictures. They are actually parroting things that have been politicized, and that's something we don't need to do in our schools. We need to keep this at an academic level. When we have teaching tools that are questionable or inappropriate content that we quietly introduce into our curriculum and into our libraries, we need to reassess them for their harm versus their good for the students to which we are exposing this material. When we have reading materials that are inappropriate language, violence, murder, descriptive terminologies, they are providing emotional and physical stimulation. No academic learning is provided, which is essential to the future of our students. And that's why the teachers are here. We don't need books that appeal to raw emotion, not academics. We are clearly living in a time of cultural warfare. And I think that's been evidenced by many things that we've heard tonight. We are cognizant that this has more to do with politics and ideology than the education. The trust in educational system in many areas is on the decline. We do not want that to happen in Sumner County. We are very proud of our educational system. But we don't want ideologies to come in and weaken our schools, resulting in a lack of the academics that we're now providing for the students like we've seen tonight. A place inside of me is inclusive of a lot of things we don't like to think about. We know they exist, but we don't like to think about murder. We don't like to think about violence. We don't like to think about being in a protest. We don't like to think about being the object of a protest. We know that these things exist.
Sorry, Ms. McPherson, your time's up. Thank you very much. Hillary, I'm not going to attempt it. Lavender, okay. Lounder, I'm sorry.
Good evening again. I had a bunch prepared, but in the interest of time, which I think everybody's time is valuable, and I think that a lot of the points I was going to make have already been made, so there's no reason to belabor it. But I just want to express the fact that when the book was reviewed at Jack Anderson, it was done so by citizens, parents of the school children, an administrator, a librarian, and teachers. The process they went through, I don't know if everybody's seen it, and I was going to go through it, but again, in the interest of time, it wasn't just a simple look at the book, everybody raise your hand, yes or no. They read the book, they delved into reviews from all different sources. It was an intense process. So I would like the result of their review to be weighed heavily, more so than, I guess, more so than just the average person saying they don't agree with the book. These people volunteered their time, or they are people that have been trained to select books or to teach. And I think that we need to give that weight when a decision is made about keeping a book or removing it from a school. I'll leave it there. Again, I think we need to rely on people that are trained to make these decisions for the school that they work at or that their children attend. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sandra. Jim Stocks.
Good evening. Excuse me, good evening. My name is Jim Stocks. I'm 104 Downing Court in Hendersonville. I'm here today to ask you to keep a place inside of me. The First Amendment of our Constitution requires that students be able to access ideas in our libraries. Justice Brennan noted in Board of Education versus Pico that, quote, students must always remain free to inquire, to study and to evaluate, and to gain new maturity and understanding. The school library is the principal locus of such freedom. Our Constitution does not permit the official suppression of ideas, end quote. It's further important to note that the First Amendment protection applies to the pictures in those books just as much as the words. Our own Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals stated the protection of the First Amendment is not limited to written or spoken words, but includes other mediums of expression, including pictures, paintings, and drawings. In short, our students have a First Amendment right to access this book. If you ban it, you will be inviting a long and expensive litigation that will cost our county a lot of money in what will almost surely be a costly exercise in stubborn futility. Now, I want to take my lawyer's hat off and put on my former teacher hat for a moment. I've heard comments at both the last meeting and at this one as well, suggesting this book would somehow cause black students to not like white students or vice versa, including a number of comments from people who had moved here from California. Well, I moved here from California too. I was an elementary level teacher in some of the toughest areas of Los Angeles, including Watts, South Central Los Angeles, areas that are made up almost exclusively of black and Hispanic students. And that was in the mid-90s, only a few years after the 1992 LA riots. I can tell you that a book like this would have done wonders to help those kids, many of whom did not know how to deal with what had happened, did not have family of their own to support and help them through their emotions. Instead, they were left to figure it out on their own, often resulting in behavioral issues and acting out, sometimes with violence. This book would have been a godsend to help show them that their feelings were normal, that they would be okay, and that love for all people, and most especially themselves, was the way through. And on that note, here's where I also take off my former teacher hat and just speak to you as some white guy in Sumner County, Tennessee. You've already heard so eloquently in the prior meeting and again here today from members of our community what this book would mean to young children of color in our county. So let me instead tell you what it would have meant to a little white kid like me. What ideas does this book have to help a little white kid mature and understand, as Justice Brennan might ask? Well, beyond helping me as a kid to understand that people who look different have the same emotions and deal with trauma just like me, it would also have had a very real and direct impact on me personally by helping me deal with tragedy. My mother died when I was a very small child. At the age of 6, which I've heard ballied about today, I didn't have my mother there to help me at home. Every moment of anger, internal conflict, every emotion, every moment of not quite knowing how to deal with loss that is expressed in this book, I felt. But I didn't have this book to help me. I wish I had, and I thank God that kids have it right now on the shelves to read. This book would have gone so far in helping me understand what I was going through. That's the message of this book, a message that's told through a black perspective and experience, but sends a universal message of love. It would not have mattered to me one bit that the author was black, that the characters were black, that it was talking about a black experience in America with pictures about things that are happening in our country. So for those who are bothered by the fact that this book is told by a black author, that the ideas are related through the perspective and experiences of characters who are black, with pictures of black Americans, I would say that's not a book problem, that's a you problem. And you do not get to take away such beautiful literature from our kids. Neither decency nor the First Amendment of our Constitution allow that. Thank you.
Time's up, Mr. Stock. Thank you. Rebecca Goddard.
Hello. Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having us. I'm just here to check my privilege with the 87 cents of every thousands of tax dollars that I pay. So let's talk facts, not willy-nilly emotions, and factless vocabulary. No one here wants to ban a book. But it raises the temperature of the debate and gets everybody all riled up. Moving the poem isn't the problem. We can all agree this is a beautiful and educational piece of work. The words, the sentiment, just like Black Lives Matter, the words, the sentiment, beautiful. The group, not so much. The branding, propaganda, and the depictions of the images are the problem, and you all know it. But it wrecks your narrative. Read the poem all day. Take the book with words and put it in the public library where all people, families, parents, and everyone have access to it. No one wants to ban it or burn it or lose their minds talking about it, okay? Let the parents choose what they want their kids to see. It's not your job. It's not your job. Yesterday while I was at my son's IEP, a child attempted suicide in his classroom. While we're arguing about pornography and picture books, we're all, every one of us, failing our children. Every single one of us. What about that child? What about the kids that witnessed a suicide attempt? How did we get here? How do we become a community arguing about porn and age-appropriate material and ignoring the kids that are suffering in our classrooms? Why are kids overdosing and attempting suicide in Sumner County? You need to vote to get this crap off the shelves and put it in the public library. Bottom line. The NEA yesterday tweeted, educators love their students and know better than anyone what they need to learn and to thrive. I think they spelled parents wrong. And I'm sorry, but my husband and I have PhDs in our children, and I know what is best for them. I know that when my son taps his finger 11 times, he's about to have an anxiety attack in his class. Are you going to know that, or do you need me on the IEP team to help you? So this is the new mantra with our education system that you guys know best and we don't. I won't accept it. I will not accept it. This is an overreach. It's arrogant. It's presumptuous. Our kids need to learn how to read. My job is to make them happy and successful human beings, and we are to work together to do that. And if we're not going to work together as a community, as an authoritarian board that you are, and as the parents and the taxpayers, this generation is doomed, and it's terrifying. So we need to step it up. And pictures like that don't belong with little kids. Let them be little, for God's sakes.
Thank you, Ms. Goddard. Jennifer Habuer. Did I say it right that time? You sure did. Okay, good. Thank you.
I'm Jennifer Hybor. I live at 262 Sherry Circle in Gallatin, and I'm the librarian at R.T. Fisher. First, I want to address my shirt. Banning a book is, by definition, removing it from a classroom or a library. And librarians, including very conservative librarians, have celebrated banned books for decades. Thus my shirt. I had a couple of librarians ask me to speak on their behalf tonight, so I'm going to share what they said with you first. I would like our school board attorney to please clarify for our board any legal terminology or particulars of the law that pertain to the book challenges as they arise to keep confusion to a minimum. We, the librarians, have been being personally attacked by members of the public and by public officials. In this educational climate, we need to be supported, not vilified. We would like for you guys to think back on your childhood librarians and remember them. We're just like them. We're certified teachers who love your children and want what's best for them. For myself, I'm now speaking. When a person reads a book, they bring their life experiences and views to the reading of that book. Adults read their own worldview into A Place Inside of Me. Kids are only going to get out of it what they see, what they read, what is read to them. My sister read this book to her 6-year-old daughter. She is fiercely protective of her and shields her from violence. She is not allowed to watch TV that is even rated Y7 as a 6-year-old. She's not allowed to play Minecraft in survival mode. No zombie killing. But she read this book to her child. She ordered it so that she could support the author. And because my sister sees this book as beautiful, so does her child. We encourage you to keep A Place Inside of Me on our library shelves. For many students, the school library is the only library.
Thank you, Ms. Habuer. Charlene Alsmiller.
I have signed up and I'm willing to speak, but I learned during the break that Brenda Dotson got here too late, and I would like to defer my time to her, if that is allowed. Okay. Sorry. So I am here to please ask you to keep A Place Inside of Me in the school libraries. The statutes of Tennessee have given you the discretionary authority for character education in TCA 49-6-1007. Nobody can take that away from you. You have the discretionary authority to determine what is character education that is suitable for our kids. In TCA 49-6-1006, it requires that Black history culture to be taught, and it will change in the future years, but the same mantra remains. You guys have the statutory authority to keep this book in here. The community wants this book in here. There are people that have argued to take the book out. Several of them do not even have kids in the schools, so they would not have their kids subject to this book. I know in the last meeting that the complainants had said that she wanted, she was colorblind. But I must say that, like, people do cancel culture all the time on entertainment that casts Black actors in traditionally white roles. Like, people don't want to watch Bridgerton, people don't want to watch Hamilton, and the National Children's Theater has Wizard of Oz and they've cast a Black character. If we were really truly colorblind, it would not matter who was playing those roles. Now, this morning I asked my 8-year-old daughter to read this book, and I had just a few minutes before she had to leave because I got home late last night. And I recorded it. I'm not going to play it because I just wanted to see and to make sure that I wasn't like feeding her anything. I asked her to read it, and then I would ask her, what do you see on these pages? And she actually thought of the pages as she connected to them as they were from the 60s and people wanting to vote. And she thought that the candles, she goes, this is a ceremony, and I see white people and I see Black people. And then I said, do you see this? And she said, it says Black Lives Matters. She has no idea. I don't even have any idea all of these sinister things that people talk about for Black Lives Matter. But to the extent that people think that Black Lives Matter is this evil that's everywhere, I mean, did you know that Hangman is based on lynchings from Black people way back? And like people, I mean, our kids play Hangman. And calling the pot calling the kettle black, that is an inherently racist term that I never knew until I was an adult and I had Black friends explain it to me. So Mr. King had mentioned in the last meeting at the end that for him it comes down to whether Black Lives Matter is used as a phrase, which he agrees is a noble thought, versus whether it means organization. And I'm going to tell you that my 6-year-old doesn't know what an organization is. My 8-year-old doesn't know that Black Lives Matter is an organization. So please, let's stop trying to read anything in there. As far as the police that are in there is police brutality that has gone on in this country. It is not depicting the police brutality that has happened in these books, but I don't think it's such a bad thing for our kids to learn in kindergarten that people are not all good or all bad. I had read a blog by a principal in this county saying that kids can only see all good or all bad, and I kid you not, like 30 seconds later, my kindergartner said, she goes, we all have a little villain in us, and we all have a little good in, or we all have good in us and a little villain in us. And I was like, oh my gosh, where did you pick that up? She goes, I don't know. We were watching a movie that was called Bad Guys. It's a cartoon. And I said, where did you learn that? She said, I don't know. And it made the perfect sense. I've recently talked with somebody who was convicted of fraud, and the reason he didn't file bankruptcy instead of for committing the fraud that he committed was because he was afraid of failure. We need to teach our kids that nobody is infallible. This book is showing protests. It is not showing the overthrowing of our American government. In fact, protests are constitutionally protected. Please, please, I would never read anything that I thought was bad to my kids. I would never ask my kids to read something bad. And I understand that people don't want their kids to read it. They can tell their librarians to keep it away. But please don't keep this away from everybody else in the school libraries, because I agree with the previous speakers that said sometimes the school libraries are the only access that these kids.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Bob Brown.
Bob Brown, 587 Forster Street Road, Hendersonville. Thank you for having us tonight. I'd just like to read something here. According to state law, Tennessee Code annotated 496-3803, such review committees only have recommendation authority and cannot render a decision or keep or remove a book. Therefore, any decision to keep or remove the book rests solely with the Board of Education, according to the state law. Ben Torres at the Tennessee Tennessee School Board Association has stated that review committees cannot decide the fate of any book. They can merely make a recommendation on whether a book violates board policy, but cannot make the final decision. The fact that review committees were formed to review the book means any decision to remove it is now under the jurisdiction of Board Policy 4.403, which requires the school board to make the final decision.
Mr. Brown,
I'm just getting started.
Yeah, I understand. I'm a little bit confused because the policies are not on the agenda of the book.
I know,
is, so.
but that's a prelude.
Okay, thank you.
So, as constitutionally elected folks, you're the ones that make the decision, not unelected officials. Now, this book, A Place Inside of Me, deals with the 14 prohibited concepts in the schools of Tennessee Code annotated 4906-1019. This is something that is an illustration book for 5 to 7-year-olds. They're going to look at the pictures. They're not going to read the words that much, because most of them at 5 cannot read. 6, they're kind of struggling. Put it in the library, public library. Let the parent take them into the library and read the book if they want to do that. This book is an illustration, portrays Black Lives Matter, the organization, as a good organization aimed at helping people. It is anything but. The original website had its mission statement known as "What We Believe," including a stated goal of disrupting America's Western prescribed nuclear family structure. When it came under fire, they cowardly pulled it off. Black Lives Matter is an organization co-founded by Patrisse Cullors, Alicia Garza, and Opal Tometi that has roots in Marxism. We actually do have an ideological framework, Cullors said of her organization in 2015. We are trained Marxists. We're super versed on sort of ideological theories. That same year, Tometi was hobnobbing with Venezuela's Marxist dictator, Nicolas Maduro, of whose regime she wrote, "In the last 17 years, we've witnessed the Bolivarian revolution champion participatory democracy and construct a fair, transparent election system recognized as among the best in the world."
Mr. Chairman, point of order, please, sir. I don't believe that...
State your order, Mr. Wise.
I'm sorry?
State your point of order, Mr. Wise.
I'm intending to do that. I don't believe that Black Lives Matter is an item on our agenda. I do believe that the book, A Place Inside of Me, is. If we could ask the speakers to stick to that item, it would be greatly appreciated.
Points well taken, Mr. Wise. Please stick to the subject of place inside of me. Thank you, sir.
I think we need to understand what Black Lives Matter is, because it is heavily done in the book. Now,
please talk about the book, sir.
Trying to. Since I cannot talk about Black Lives Matter, I guess I'll just finish up here. I'm surprised that the Tennessee legislature has to write such laws to be this specific, to try and regulate books like this about various discriminations, age appropriateness for minors, the innocence of our children, and willful perversion of children by adults. The reason being is that we have adults and educators who are trying to skirt these laws, trying to find some loophole or push some envelope. Through the pandemic and its unnecessarily long shutdowns and ill-advised mandates, not to disparage those who died through poor medical protocols in hospitals and nursing homes and fatal comorbidities, parents became aware of the curriculum with which their children had to be indoctrinated. Parents became engaged because of the curtain being pulled back through these Zoom classes. Online about the inappropriate...
Mr. Brown, your time's up. Thank you. Marlis Boyd.
Hi, my name is Marlis Boyce, 1050 Glenbrook Way, Hendersonville. I'm a concerned citizen and taxpayer who sent an email to every school board member regarding removing the book, A Place Inside of Me. A few of you acknowledged my email, many did not, so I'm going to read it to you now so you understand where I stand. A book, A Place Inside of Me, promotes BLM's belief that all police are racist. It has dark, negative, emotional content aimed at young children. Most kindergarten or first grade students aren't going to be able to read this poem since the text is above their reading level. A young child will only see the pictures, and the pictures tell the story of the murder of a black girl by racist cops. How is that appropriate for kindergarten and first grade children? It is not. Our schools should be focusing on teaching young students how to read with excellent, tried, and true literature, not putting negative images and concepts into their young and malleable minds. Just because a book is said to be diverse does not mean it is age appropriate, and in my opinion, this book is clearly not age appropriate. So please vote to remove this book tonight. And also, I concur with the resolution passed last night by the County Commission. It says that some books in our school libraries are violating Tennessee law, and that they are encouraging the director of schools to form committees to review these books.
Thank you, Ms. Boyd. Tara Perry.
Hi there, I'm Dr. Tara Perry. I live at 213 Island Drive in Hendersonville. Interestingly, I was also trained by Marissa Peer, who's one of the most famous hypnotherapists on the planet, and she has a free program for schools that teaches how to deal with bullying. But she doesn't do it by teaching anger and fear and victimization. She does it by teaching empowerment. And I do think the content of this book is highly inappropriate for young people. I spend a lot of my time helping people resolve childhood trauma, and when books are placed in an environment where young children who are very impressionable are made to feel anger, frustration, resentment at things that are beyond the level of a child that can process it at that age, I think it is better belonging in the school library rather than, at the public library rather than in the school young children's library. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Perry. Kelsey Nick. Glasses again. Kelsey Nicklaw.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for your time, a lot of time, as it turns out. I appreciate all of those of you who challenged this book, because a lot of us who weren't aware of it before have now gotten to enjoy and purchase this book. I wanted to speak today on my firm belief that A Place Inside of Me should remain on the library shelves and be accessible for all children who choose to read it. This book is not required reading. Although it might not be the choice for some, it can provide something valuable for other kids, and those kids should absolutely have access to it. First, to the parents, I want to say I get it. We live in a crazy world. We're all trying to make tough decisions about our kids and protect them. But this is public school, and a public school library should represent all of the people in this county, some of which are African American. It should represent all, which means if you choose to send your child to public school, or if you want to participate in this community in any way, your child will inevitably be exposed to values, beliefs, and ideas that are different than your own. And when my child comes home one day with a book or tells me something a friend said that I might not agree with myself, it will be an opportunity for conversation with my child, not an invitation to take away someone else's freedom. If one optional book feels threatening to your values, public school may not be for you. And that is your choice. And just to clear up a few misunderstandings, we've talked about it's a Puerto Rican flag, which is a U.S. territory. Black Lives Matter is not a terrorist organization or liberal group. It's not a group at all. It's a social justice movement like civil rights. It's an idea. And I'm pretty sure characters in literature all have ideas, whether we agree with them or not. This book isn't trying to convince anyone of anything. It is a poem to heal the heart, written by a Black person about Black experiences. It doesn't mention racism. It doesn't vilify white people. They're not showing any white people doing anything harmful in this book, even in the images. It doesn't even mention the police, nor does it show the police committing this murder, as some people are saying it was like a police murder. Like, they don't show that. That is not in the images of the book. Or committing any actual acts of violence. You are interpreting these images how you want to as adults. This may not speak to kids of fear, but empowerment. This poem is a message of self-love, and the only thing inappropriate going on here is to have the message perverted into something divisive. The message is hope. A Place Inside of Me depicts images of events that have taken place in our country. These images are of a peaceful protest as well as symbols of a movement against racial injustice. None of this is grounds for removal of the book, as it merely points to a life experience that may be different than your own. If you don't want your kids to learn about others' life experiences, by all means, tell them not to read this book. But don't take away my right to make that decision for my child. That is a personal choice. Some parents don't let their kids have sugar. They might think sugar is dangerous even to their child, but they aren't demanding all the cookies be removed from the cafeteria. Other people should have access to them if they want. We all want freedom to make our own decisions. Do not take away the access of this book for my child. I would like to remind everyone here that we are not at war. We are not enemies. We are neighbors. As a community, I sincerely hope that we can all agree to stand against intolerance in our school system. This book may make some adults uncomfortable. I have heard no complaints from children, by the way. My 5-year-old can read. He liked it. He said that he has a skateboard and it's a book about feelings. That was the takeaway from it. And he is 5 years old. Listening to the voices of other people and learning about their experiences is how our children will learn the empathy it takes to make the world a better place. I do believe empathy has a place as being taught in our schools, as our children spend most of their time there during weekdays. Let's respect our professional librarians and let them continue to do their job and put this completely optional book back on the shelf where it belongs. Thank you and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Ms. Nicola. That concludes the public comments. We're going to take about a 5-minute recess, and we'll be back in just a few minutes. counted 7 in the neighbor's yard. Yeah. Yeah, we got to do it before 9 o'clock. All right, we called the meeting back to order.
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Andrews?
Yeah, I would like a motion for us to extend our meeting. We're getting awfully close to the 9 o'clock mark, and so I make a motion that we extend for an hour.
All right, motion's been made. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Lancaster. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll have to do a roll call. Mr. Johnson?
Yes, sir. Hang on. Let me get there. Mr. Lancaster. Ms. Hayes? Yes. Mr. Lancaster? Yes. Ms. Andrews? Yes. Mr. King?
Yes.
Ms. Hawkins? Yes. Mr. Daniels?
Yes.
Mr. Wise?
Yes.
Mr. Gregory? Yes. Mr. Lacey?
Yes.
Chairman Brewer?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, motion carries to go to 10 o'clock. Now, the policy does state that we cannot go past 10 o'clock, so we've got to get the business done between now and 10 o'clock. Next item on the agenda is reports from the director.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
It's holiday season. So that's it. I'll be brief. I know we're time sensitive.
All right, thank you, Dr. Phillips. Next item on the agenda is new business, discussion and interaction regarding architectural design fees for the HHS Science Lab renovation. Is there a motion? Motion to approve by Mr. Wise. I think we got Ms. Hayes second. Discussion, Ms. Hawkins?
Just wanted to know if there were other proposals from other companies.
We haven't. No, we use this firm.
Okay.
The board voted years ago to use this firm. They're the same firm we use for everything.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hawkins. Mr. Lancaster?
Is this something that has been budgeted or that we're planning to budget? Okay.
Yeah, this is something that we've been planning to do. So we put this into the capital project budget on our side last year. So it's actually in the budget. So, and once this goes, once the plans are drawn and they're put out to bid, then obviously that bid will come back to the board to either be approved or rejected. Just depends on what it is.
Thank you, Ms. Lancaster. Ms. Andrews?
2 questions. Is this going to, or how many of these labs are at HHS? And is this going to be similar to what we did as far as the renovation or the update at Beach High School?
Yes. I think there are 8 there. 8 classroom and lab settings that will be impacted. Yes, it does get HHS to where we did renovations in other high schools the past 5-6 years.
Thank you, Ms. Andrews. Thank you, Dr. Phillips. Any others? Seeing none. Mr. Johnson?
Ms. Hayes? Yes. Mr. Lancaster? Yes. Ms. Andrews? Yes. Mr. King?
Yes.
Ms. Hawkins? Yes. Mr. Daniels?
Yes.
Mr. Wise?
Yes.
Mr. Gregory?
Yes.
Mr. Lacey?
Yes.
Chairman Brewer?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is discussion and or action regarding proposed union 2023-2024 school calendar. Motion approved by Mr. Daniels, second by Ms. Andrews, I think I heard. Discussion? No discussion? All right.
Ms. Hayes?
Discussion, so.
Mr. Lancaster?
Yes.
Ms. Andrews?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Ms. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Daniels?
Yes.
Mr. Wise?
Yes.
Mr. Gregory?
Yes.
Mr. Lacey?
Mr. Lacey?
Yes.
Chairman Brewer?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next item on the agenda is discussion and interaction regarding the reconsideration request appeal for library book, A Place Inside of Me.
Motion to uphold the school level committee decision.
Motion been made to uphold the school level decision, second by Ms. Andrews. Discussion.
I've got you in the queue. Mr. Lacey.
Oh, Mr. Lacey. Okay, sorry.
Okay, am I up?
You are.
Yeah, like I said, I just want to talk to the board. This book was checked out by a 6-year-old. It's a picture book. When I was 6 years old and 5 years old, I didn't read books. I looked at the pictures. The pictures is what I really find offensive in this book. And like I said, I'm going to challenge you to protect kids. My vote tonight will be to protect kids and to support police. I believe this book is age inappropriate. Like I said, I challenge you guys to protect kids. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you, Mr. Lacy. Mr. King?
Yes, so I have some prepared statements. If you could bear with me. First, I want to publicly apologize for confusing the flags, the Puerto Rican flag with the Cuban flag, in the absence of the American flag in the book. That was a mistake. Elected officials make mistakes, and when they do, I believe they ought to apologize. And so I sincerely apologize for that, and I retract those statements. The issue with this book is not about race or diversity or denying representation to minorities. Our librarians do a tremendous job of curating their collections to include a variety of diverse books representing people and cultures from all walks of life. But making this about race, it sets up a straw man that can easily be attacked, and it has been attacked. The issue here is whether this book violates the Prohibited Concepts Law and the Age Appropriate Materials Law. The question is the content appropriate for the age and grade level of the students? At the end of the day, the law is our directive. I believe this book violates Tennessee Law TCA 496-1019, which is the Prohibited Concepts Law. This law prohibits any material that includes or promotes the following concepts. 1, an individual by virtue of the individual's race is inherently privileged or oppressive. Number 2, an individual bears responsibility for actions committed by other members of the same race. Number 3, that the state or the United States is fundamentally racist, and that includes state agencies like law enforcement. Or deeming an individual by virtue of their race as oppressive. Promoting division between or resentment of a race or a class of people. The Black Lives Matter organization supports all of these concepts, and this book promotes that organization to children. Some are saying the references to Black Lives Matter in the book are not referring to the organization. Based on what proof? Where does the organization end and the statement Black Lives Matter begin? As I said in my comments from the last meeting, one can believe the statement Black Lives Matter because they absolutely do. That is, that statement is absolutely true. Black lives do matter, but they can also disagree with the Black Lives Matter organization and their political agenda. Now, many people don't want there to be a distinction. But there is. Young children can't make that distinction when viewing the BLM messaging in this book. The authors of this book stand in solidarity with the BLM organization, an organization that has a hatred of law enforcement. They call for defunding the police and state on their website that all law enforcement is a racist system. To promote that ideology, in our schools violates Tennessee law. The authors of this book have taken that premise and retooled it into a children's book in order to instill that ideology into the minds of young children. There is no denying that, and that is partially the intent of this book. Since the last meeting, I've learned a lot about this book. I've learned that the reading grade level for the poem is a 5.1. according to TidalWave.com. Many of our librarians are familiar with that education resource. 5.1 is a 5th grade and up reading level. But this book is shelved for kindergarten and 1st grade. While some children in those grades might be able to decode or sound out some of the words, comprehension is unlikely. Without assistance, they will likely not be able to comprehend the poem. So the idea that children will happen upon this book in the library and be able to read and understand the poem is unlikely. Their experience with this book will be through the pictures. And it is the illustrations that won the Caldecott Award. So the intent of this book is to have children see and dwell on the images. There's no denying that. And what do the images teach? A child looking at the pictures in this book, some will undoubtedly have some questions. For example, why was this girl shot and killed? There's only one answer the book provides: because she's black. Who shot her? Again, one answer the book gives: the police. Not an individual bad cop, but the police as a whole are shown to be complicit. Why did the police shoot her? Because she's black. This implicates all police as racist. What other answers could there possibly be? These are the facts. It's not conspiratorial. These are the only answers to these questions that the book provides. To say that this is an innocent book is a lie. It is based on a false narrative and a premise that is a complete lie. Not all law enforcement is racist. While someone's lived experience might inform their own opinion that it is, that does not make it absolute truth for everyone. To take someone's lived experience and present it as absolute truth for everyone is dishonest. Lived experience is an infallible test for truth. We need to examine facts and teach the facts to our students, not subjective, dogmatic theories like, quote, all law enforcement is a racist system. Not all police are racist killers. And that is what this book leads children to believe. And that is a violation of Tennessee law, TCA 49-6-1019. I received the following from a wife of an SRO officer who serves in one of our schools. She wrote me and said, quote, thank you for what you said in the school board meeting last night about the book in question. As the wife of a law enforcement officer that works inside of a school, it means the world to me to have people acknowledge, or to have people advocating for him, that he's not a racist white cop that just wants to kill black people. He is human, and he does this thankless job to protect everybody. It hurts my heart that this book is in our schools. And I got this from one of our educators after a child in that school thought it would be cool to dress up like his SRO officer on Community Helper Day. Quote, should a first grader who dresses up like his SRO officer on Community Helper Day be exposed to a library book vilifying the same community helper as a baton-swinging, minority-hating monster? How can any elected official say that they support our law enforcement officers and SRO officers and then vote in support of a book that teaches children that they are racist villains? Furthermore, this is a violation of the Age Appropriate Materials Act, 49-6-3803, that requires the library collection to be, quote, appropriate for the age and maturity levels of the students who may access the materials. This is a book about a racist killing of a girl because she's black by racist police. How is that appropriate for kindergarten and first grade children? What other books about real life, violent murder, and death are available for those grades? Probably not many. I would say none. Yet this book gets a pass. And I'll repeat what I said that someone mocked earlier. These are babies. They live in a world where reality and fantasy are blurred. They can't tie their shoes, many of them. They are dealing with matters of personal hygiene, and I won't elaborate. They believe in Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, the Tooth Fairy. They are developmentally incapable of processing and managing psychologically such traumatic subjects. Some students experience trauma. A lot of horrifying things happen to 6-year-olds, but that does not make it appropriate for other 6-year-olds to read about it. In closing, I'm going to be a no on this because I believe this book is in violation of state law due to its promotion of the BLM organization and its messaging within this book that deems that law enforcement is fundamentally racist. I'm also a no on this book because it violates the Age Appropriate Materials Act law in promoting mature themes, violence, dark and negative concepts to children who are too young and not yet developmentally capable to process those things on their own. It is not an innocent book, but rather strips away innocence. Our message to parents should be that Sumner County Schools will do our part to safeguard the innocence of their children. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. King. Mrs. Hawkins?
Yes, could I ask someone who has a copy of the book to please bring it to me? Thank you. Mr. King, can you please show me where it says that the girl is killed by a racist cop? What page is that on? I'm all about facts. I really couldn't find it.
Here it says girl shot.
Girl shot, okay.
And in the introduction it says that it was a police shooting. And then we have the police here, the rioting against police.
Right. Okay, so it is a police shooting, girl shot. That interprets to all police officers are racist?
What other answer does the book provide?
It
doesn't implicate an individual cop.
Ms. Hawkins, Ms. Hawkins, Mr. King, this is not a time for debate.
I will speak on my own.
Ms. Hawkins has the floor.
Yes, thank you. I realize that everyone has their mindset in this room right now. There's not one thing I can say to change your mind, and I'm not going to try to. What I'm going to do is speak mine. I have spent the last 2 days immersing myself in Sumner County elementary school libraries. I asked to know where this book was placed in the library at Jack Anderson. It is placed where children of all ages can access it. It's not just specifically picture books. It's for everyone. What I see, I think everyone sees this book through different lenses. This is what I see. So, again, I'm not trying to change your mind. I'm just telling you what I see. I see the story of a little boy who's happy. He's riding his skateboard. He's having fun. He plays basketball. Something happens where a girl is killed, someone who it looks like him, and it's upsetting. And he gets scared. He doesn't understand. He's confused. And then it transitions into anger. He sees the protests. He sees the police officers doing their job, controlling the crowd. There is one police officer with his hand up in the air. But you don't see him striking anyone. You don't see any gore. You don't see any violence as far as actual hitting or interaction as far as touching each other. The little boy has a choice. What's he going to do? What's he going to do with those feelings? He's going to reach down inside and decide what to do next. And what he decides to do next is meditate and to sit quietly and think. He does not decide to go get a brick and break a window. He does not decide to get a weapon and harm his classmates. He does not decide to go become destructive and violent. He meditates. He goes and helps another classmate or a friend. He consoles that friend. He shows compassion. And through these acts of reaching out to others, non-violence, he finds joy. He finds joy. You don't see him becoming violent at the end. He doesn't become one of whatever's happening. He finds joy. And through that joy, he is free. And the last thing he does is he goes back and rides his skateboard, and he's happy again. Now that's a lesson I think we can all learn from. I will also say from my 2 days of immersion in elementary school libraries is that this book is considered a narrative nonfiction. Nonfiction means that it's based on true events. The narrative is of a fictional boy. He doesn't have a name or an identity, but he is like many children who are in our school system who might identify with him. But it is true story. These things happen. There is a sign somewhere that says Black Lives Matter. It's not condoning it. It's not criticizing it. It's just there. It's part of its history. Some of the books I found in the same area, if you're wanting to get rid of that one because it's divisive. I checked out a few books myself. Ruby, Head High, about Ruby Bridges. This is in the same area, same reading level. We've got a picture of historical fact of what she went through to get into her classroom. We have a picture of a person holding a casket with a black doll in it. These are true facts. These happened. We've got another book, As Good as Anybody. Martin Luther King Jr. tells his story. It's going to have some unpleasant things in it because that's his story. It's true. We have police officers. We have conflict. We have dogs. Is that going to get pulled? Are we going to pull that one too because police officers are in this picture? I submit to you that a child has a right to see history. And if we start pulling books that have factual events in them, then we're in real trouble. I think we need to think long and hard about what we're saying here. If people see what they want to see, and I can tell what people see tells me a whole lot. They're not seeing the end. They're not seeing the joy from nonviolence that comes from this book. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hawkins. Mr. Daniels?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think kind of along the same lines as Ms. Hawkins, and had some of the same thoughts that it's impossible for us to convince anyone to change anyone's mind. But it is, I think, important to share some of our thoughts. And, you know, just a couple of things that have been on my mind as I've thought about this book and other books and the idea of regulating what books are allowed in libraries and what books aren't. You know, one of the things is we live in one of the reddest counties in one of the reddest states in the country. And so when I hear comments that we're allowing liberal ideology or political indoctrination into our schools, I kind of find it hard to believe. I mean, there's a reason our state legislature, agree with them or not, has passed the AAMA along with CRT legislation. And we can talk about book bans or not book bans or call it parental rights, but there is a movement to ban books in this country. And our county is not unique. A recent study by PEN America tracked 2,532 decisions to ban books between July 1st, 2021 and June 30th, 2022. They identified at least 1,648 banned titles by 1,261 authors, 290 illustrators, 18 translators, impacting 32 states, 138 school districts, 5,049 schools, with a combined enrollment of nearly 4 million students. Now, that doesn't mean that every single book ever written should be allowed in every school library, but I trust our school librarians to make decisions based on the needs of their community and their student body. Now, that doesn't mean that books won't sometimes fall through the cracks. There's a reason we have a review process that allows parents to identify books that they don't believe their children should read. And that policy is reflected in our school board manual. Now, in regards to this book, what I find interesting about the book, A Place Inside of Me, is that there are really two primary complaints that I've heard. Number one is that this book teaches young children that all police are racist. Now, I've read this book multiple times, and not once have I seen those words inside that book. In fact, the book ends with these words: "For there is love inside of me, true love deep inside of me. I am in love with my people, all people." The second complaint is that this book makes references to Black Lives Matter and comments that it promotes Marxist and socialist propaganda, liberal ideology, and that the leaders have duped people into donating millions of dollars in the name of social justice. However, the Supreme Court ruled in Pico that a school board cannot determine the content of school libraries based on their own personal political ideology. Now, we can say that we don't care what the Supreme Court says, and we want to remove this book anyway. But I think that opens us up to a whole lot of other challenges. Let me give you some examples. I read an article the other day about a group called America Frontline Doctors in that organization. And there are concerns that have been expressed about that organization and an internal audit showing that there has been extravagant spending of the organization's donations involving private jet trips, the purchase of homes, and things like that. Does that mean that books about Dr. Gold or the AFDLS aren't allowed? Or what about the group Moms for Liberty? They've partnered with groups called Brave Books, Heroes for Liberty, and the American Cornerstone Institute. And there are some people that believe that this is introducing what they call conservative propaganda into public school libraries. Now, I don't have a problem with those books. But if we say that we can't allow A Place Inside of Me because of the political ideology, then we have to say no books with any political ideology are allowed in our school system. Now, I've heard some other comments. I've heard some people say that, let's just pull it out of a school library. Let's put it in a public library. Well, I was reading an article and someone made a comment that kind of stood out in my mind. He said, some people say, oh, they can just go buy it at the bookstore if they want it. That's a very privileged thing for someone to say, well, they can just go buy it. No, they can't. Not every community has a bookstore. Not everyone has money to spend on books. That's one of the reasons that library exists. And not everyone has the ability to get to the public library. I live in Gallatin. A majority of the students in my community and in my district ride buses. Many of them go home to houses without parents in their home. How are they going to get to the library if they don't have transportation? That's the reason that school libraries are in schools, so that every child has access to materials. Now, there's one other comment, and really kind of bothered me. There was a comment made that I did some research, and I studied up on each one of you, and you all claim to be Christians. Let me share my background with you. I grew up in Gallatin, grew up at First Baptist Church in Gallatin, born and raised in the church. My parents took me to church. My dad was a youth minister. I spent my summers at youth camps. That was our family vacation. I'm married. I have 6 kids. We have what we refer to as two sets, the bigs and the littles. My older set has already graduated. My younger set is in middle school and elementary school. Years ago, after we had our first 3 sets of kids, we got into foster care. And for 2 years, we had 4 African American children in our home. All under the ages of 2. I remember going to Walmart one night, and I'm pushing kids up one aisle. I've got one of my children and 2 of the foster kids. My wife's going up another aisle with the other 2 foster kids and our other 2 kids. And I come down to the end of the aisle, and I remember seeing a lady with a WWJD bracelet on. And I remember her looking at my wife as she stood there, not seeing me, and looking at the kids in that cart that were of different races. And excuse my language, but saying she must be a whore. So when I look at studies, and there's a study right now from Gallup that says that 47% of people in the United States go to church, and that's the first time in over 8 decades of that survey that less than 50% of people claim to go to church. And there's a lot of reasons that we could argue, and I hear people say all day long that maybe the reason people don't go to church is because of what they're taught in school. I raised my kids to church. I've got a daughter that was a sophomore. And in her youth group, some of the leaders, the student leaders in that group, said some things about her that were so vile and disgusting that she has refused to go back. And those students, their parents were the leaders in the youth group. And you know what happened? Nothing. So when I hear people say, why are people leaving the church? Well, one of the verses that always comes to mind is this, Luke 6:37, judge not, and you will not be judged. Condemn not, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Maybe the reason people are leaving church, especially our younger students, are because they walk in the doors of the church on Sunday and they see people raising their hands and singing Amazing Grace. And then they see them drive out of the parking lot with a Let's Go Brandon bumper sticker on the back of their car. And they see the vile and the hate and the disgust and the words they use on social media and in public comments. You know, there's a story about the rich young man, Mark 12. And the rich young man asks a question of Jesus. He says, which commandment is the most important? The most important is, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and with all your strength. The second is, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than this. Maybe the problem is that we have a generation of people that look at our church congregation that proclaim Jesus on Sundays, but don't live it the rest of the week. And they want a Jesus, and they want to follow a Jesus that says, love everyone. They want to follow a Jesus that goes to the lepers, the outcasts, and doesn't condemn them. He saves them. Amen. So I'm sorry for getting a little bit emotional. But I'll be honest. If I were to meet my Heavenly Father tonight, and He were to ask me about this book, voting to keep it in our schools for our students is not something I'd be ashamed of. And you know, I find it interesting, and you know, what if I was to tell you that right now there's a children's book in our library written by an organization that has been described as woke, liberal, and LGBTQ supportive. That this book contains illustrations of a violent wolf attack, a mob filled with individuals carrying torches and pitchforks, and ends with a violent death. Yet no one has said a word about this book. And if you're curious about the book I'm talking about, I've got it right here. It's the little golden book, Beauty and the Beast. The point I'm trying to make is you can look at any book and find things you don't like, but that doesn't mean it raises to the level of being reviewed or being banned or not being allowed in the hands of students that might find comfort in that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels. Seeing no other lights on, go for the vote. Mr. Johnson?
Yes, sir. Just to clarify for everybody, the motion on the floor is it's a motion to uphold the school level committee decision. And with that, Ms. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Lancaster? Ms. Andrews?
Yes.
Mr. King?
No.
Ms. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Daniels?
Yes.
Mr. Wise?
Yes.
Mr. Gregory?
Yes.
Mr. Lacey?
No.
Chairman Brewer?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Agenda is, you made it good almost all night, so let's make it to the end. And I really appreciate that. I really appreciate the respect that y'all had tonight. We've got some other things to get to. We got a short time to get to them. Next item on the agenda is discussion and interaction regarding amendment to the general purpose budget. Is there a motion? Motion approved everywhere by Mr. Wise and second by Ms. Andrews. Any discussion? Seeing none, Mr.
Is this still the, sorry, I'm sorry. Stephen, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. King?
Yeah, I'm just curious about this. This is the, it says funds will be used to provide contracted services for students with disabilities. And I'm just asking, what has happened here? Is it, are we not able to fill positions?
Just a second, let them kind of clear
Okay.
out, because they're not being able to hear you.
Okay, okay. Right.
Okay, I think we got it now. Carry on, Mr. King.
Yeah, I'm just curious about what this is involving. Are there, it says struggle to find licensed applicants for open salary positions. Are we consolidating those? Or what is the contracts for and how long? And I'm just curious what this is. If just an explanation, that's all.
Yeah.
Ms. Daniels?
In Sumner County, across Tennessee, and across the United States is a shortage of special education staff, be it teachers, school psychologists, speech language pathologists. So because of that, we have had to contract with individuals instead of hiring our own employees. So we've had to move some funds around so that we can cover the contract line.
Okay.
Because we didn't have that much to cover all these contracts.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. King.
Yeah.
Mr. Lancaster?
Yeah, that was my question too, is I thought that was what this was. I mean, I know working at Vanderbilt, we have issues finding psychologists to hire as well. And I think I read last week that I believe Rutherford County is down like 16 or 18 psychologists, and they're unable to hire. So that was all I was wanting to make sure is that was what this was.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lancaster. Seeing no other lights, roll call vote. Mr. Johnson?
Ms. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Lancaster? Ms. Andrews? Mr. King?
I'm sorry, I have another question. I had another question about the next item. The next folder over. Is that in this same thing? I'm sorry.
General purpose.
Yeah, general purpose budget. I'm sorry, we started the voting. My question is, I'm looking at the 76,000 for, it looks like miscellaneous insurance increases and director's search. What is that? Can I just get another explanation on that?
So the 76,000 is coming out of other charges and it's being amended into liability insurance. And so I explained this to Mr. Lancaster and Ms. Andrews earlier. So last year we changed over our insurance, and at the beginning through our budget cycle it was our first year to be on that new insurance, and so we had some slight increases because of our deductible changes, and so this is amending that money in. I wasn't able to get those full estimates in time for the budget last May, and so I also told Miss Andrews and Mr. Lancaster that we are working with our vendor and working on those estimates now, so hopefully that won't be an issue for next year. The workers' comp, same thing, it's $1,000. We have some charges for certain things within workers' comp that are over and above actual premiums, and so most of those are reimbursed, but at any given time we may have a charge that hasn't been reimbursed. The $15,000 is for when the budget was when I did the budget last year, Dr. Phillips had not yet told us about his decision, and so I had no money in a line for a director's search, and so I'm moving the money into a line that's appropriate to pay for that director's search.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Thank you, Mr. King. Further finish the vote. Mr. Johnson.
Yes. Ms. Hawkins. Yes. Mr. Daniels. Yes. Mr. Wise.
Yes.
Mr. Gregory. Yes. Mr. Lacey.
Yes.
Chairman Brewer.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is discussion and action regarding amendments to the federal budget. Is there a motion? Motion approved by Mr. Daniels, second by Mr. Wise. Discussion. Mr. King.
Just another explanation. I'm sorry. So why is $100,000 being taken from staff development and transferred to other salaries and wages? I'm just wanting to know.
So at the beginning of each year, our federal budget, we are given a certain allocation, and then as our year finalizes, which is in early mid-August, then we finalize those reports. The additional money can be reallocated to us by the state, and when we receive those reallocated funds, we then amend those in. And so originally we had some charges that were earlier in the year, and we did not have that reallocated funds in order to pay those, so they were sitting in a certain line. Now we've had those reallocations, and this pays for stipends for teacher leaders. And so we did not have those funds, but we did have to pay for some professional development. And so now that we've had those reallocated, this is just a reallocation to where we need those funds.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. King. Roll call vote. Mr. Johnson?
Yes, sir. Ms. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Lancaster?
Yes.
Ms. Andrews? Yes. Mr. King?
Yes.
Ms. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Daniels?
Yes.
Mr. Wise?
Yes.
Mr. Gregory?
Yes.
Mr. Lacey?
So we're voting on it already? Yes. If we're voting on it, yes.
Chairman Brewer.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, next item on the agenda is discussion of study session items. Generally, we just kind of breeze by there. If you've got anything you want to put on the study session, get in touch with Jeremy or Dr. Phillips. And,
I've got one item real quick. Do I save it for board comments or do I do it now? Okay. I would like to add, based on board policy, to add the naming of the Union Elementary School Library after a former board member, Will Duncan.
all right, discuss that. All right, next item on the agenda is communication from board members. Mr. Gregory, let's start with you. Mr. Gregory? Do you have any comments? We're doing board comments. Yes, sir. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Gregory. I appreciate you giving your time to me. I do want to mention a few things here. The Carl Fusell family, our thoughts and prayers go out to he and his family in his passing this last week. Mr. Fusell was a several years principal at White House Middle School. Matter of fact, both of my children went through White House Middle when he was principal. So our thoughts and prayers go out to that family. Also, I want to mention the Gallatin High School student, his family, and the Gallatin High School family. I'd like for our thoughts and prayers to go out to them as well. On a little brighter note, I want to congratulate Oakmont Elementary School. I reckon this is public, isn't it now, Scott? Okay. It got to me, so I guess it got public. But anyway, the ESEA, which is a national organization, which is really it's the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. And this is a national award given to Oakmont Elementary School. It's the first time that's happened in Sumner County. And it's only one of two given each year in the state of Tennessee. Oakmont's a special little place at mine. Now, I've been on this board a little over 14 years now, and I've learned a thing or two, believe that or not, but I just would kind of like to help our newer members out maybe a little bit. And I'm going to ask Dr. Phillips a question. He doesn't know it's coming, but I'm going to ask him anyway. Can you name a single time that I've called you through the week, even sometimes on the weekend, through the week, and we have a discussion about something in our school system and it was handled? Has there been a single time that it was not handled? I know not. I know not. Call him. Call our assistant directors down here. If you have questions about budget, they know the answers. If you have questions about special education, if you have questions about the academic arena, call Mr. Langford. He will take your call. That way, you don't have to ask questions on an extended board meeting night. And I want to remind all of us, and it really bothered me watching last month's meeting, and I again apologize that I wasn't able to be here. I was over 2 hours away. We need to remember that we are setting an example for children who may be in attendance at our meetings, who may watch it later. We are supposed to be setting an example for children, for adults who are in our audience so that they know how to interact with us. We are setting examples possibly for even our county commission so that they can see how a well-organized meeting goes. So I just want us to remember that we are setting an example. Whatever we do, somebody's watching us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wise. Mr. Daniels?
Yeah, I was, as Mr. Wise said, I was going to make sure we remember the family in Gallatin, the tragedy that happened here. I know some of the family members and some of the close acquaintances, and they're having a tough time with it. But just remember them as we go into this Thanksgiving and holiday season. Also, one of our speakers mentioned that she had books that she wanted to provide to each of us as board members. And so I've got copies of those, and so I'll just pass those out when this meeting's over. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels. Ms. Hawkins?
Yes, I too want to express my condolences to the family and friends of the student who was shot and killed. And it feels very strange to have such extreme emotions from such sadness with his loss and the tragedy of that. And then at the other end, we have all these AP scholars going on and living their lives. And it tears at you when you see one that's not going to be able to do that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hawkins. Ms. Hawkins. Mr. King. Ms. Andrews.
Yeah, I do want to also say thank you for staff and organizing the AP Scholars and recognizing them. I feel like a lot of times those are students who, you know, they may be, you know, on sports teams and so forth, but a lot of times they're not. A lot of times academics is their sports, and sometimes they're the ones that fly under the radar, even though they're the ones that are probably going to lead our country one day. I know Hadley Brown will be. But just want to say thank you for recognizing them and making sure that they get in here. Obviously, I'm biased to one particular one. She was awfully cute. But just proud of the work that Sumner County is doing. I also want to say I had the pleasure of attending TSBA's yearly convention this weekend at Aubreyland Hotel. It was great. I was able to attend a couple of sessions, learn some information, particularly about textbook adoption. It was really great to sit in that session and kind of hear the work that is happening through that, especially in light of us you know, fixing to go through the math textbook adoption. I had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Cash, who previously was here in Sumner County, and so it was that was a nice treat as well. And then Saturday evening was able to attend the award ceremony and accept on behalf of Liberty Creek Elementary the 2022 School of the Year for Excellence in Architectural Design. So I'm sure Dr. Reynolds is going to be excited to have that. We are proud of the work that is there. Obviously, there was lots of thought that went into that school and design. It's similar to many of our other elementary schools that have newly been built with some tweaks. And I think those tweaks are welcomed and are being enjoyed in the school and were very well thought out. Particularly, I will have to say, I think the way in which the related arts department and so forth, sometimes they do not get the attention that they deserve. You know, you've got to make sure you've got the classrooms in there, and then you kind of, oh, here's a room for art and here's a room for music. But those were intentionally thought out, and the floor plan on that is incredible. So just want to brag on that, and I'll be happy to deliver that to Dr. Reynolds sometime this week.
Thanks, Ms. Andrews. Mr. Lancaster?
You can't keep that.
No, I'm just glad I hadn't got broke between Saturdays with my boys.
So on Friday, it was Veterans Day, and I got to attend two different Veterans Day programs, one at Beach Elementary and one at T.W. Hunter. The T.W. Hunter one was almost completely student-led, and it was really, really good. Really amazing job that they did. The choir, which my child is in, so I was, you know, always nice to see. But and the band as well, and just the student government at T.W. Hunter that led that, it was just really, really good. Also last week, and this is another thing I got to be involved in, we had Thanksgiving lunches, I think throughout the district. I know there was a little concern there for a while if we were going to get turkeys, because I think our turkey vendor had an issue. So if you haven't bought your turkey, buy your turkey. But it also gave me a newfound respect, not that I didn't already have a respect for our cafeteria workers, but for the past 2 years I got to volunteer and serve at the elementary school, and you know, they have to find the big gloves for me, but so I got to serve cafeteria meals, Thanksgiving meals for 2 days at Beach Elementary, and that was great. Just having families come into the school system and seeing, what great things we do have going on in our schools. And the only other thing I would like to bring up is we are entering Thanksgiving and Christmas season. We have a poor economy, I would say, going on right now. A lot of people are struggling. We've got a lot more, from talking to our guidance counselor at the elementary school, have a lot more than normal students that are going to be needing help this year, and families that are going to be needing help. If you could, we have our Sumner County Family Resource Center that helps with that. If you can reach out, if you are able to do so, please consider making a donation during this time to that organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lancaster. Mr. Hayes?
Thank you, Chairman Brewer. I'm going off Mr. Lancaster. We had the same notes. Friday was a very busy day. There were the Veterans Day program at Ellis Middle School. Like Mr. Lancaster said, this was student-led by the leadership of their student body, I guess is how they did a phenomenal job. And community involvement, so many parents, grandparents, and the veterans stood. It was the song, the choir sang, the orchestra played, and where they acknowledged the different branches of the armed service, and they stand. And it just gives me chills. And of course, everyone applauded, and they did a great job. Adam is just a phenomenal leader at that school. The Merrill Hyde Magnet Paideia was incredible, as always. These students had lively civil discourse over topics, and they do it so well. There was a lot of community involvement. You can sit in on the sessions. If you have not attended, I encourage you to attend. These students, they're incredible, and they did a phenomenal job of having civil discourse. Thanksgiving lunches were attended. I hit 2 of them. I didn't get every school in my district time to get around to all of them, but they just, community involvement, parents, just the excitement of the kids when there is the community there to support them. So just thank the hard work of all of our Sumner County employees, the staff, teachers, administrators, and have a blessed Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes. Mr. Lacey?
Yes, sir. I would just like to say, I think our libraries, like they have been attacked. And like I said, I don't have any will toward our librarians. I love our librarians. I love our school staff, and we appreciate their service. And it's not, this was not about our librarians. And I just want them to know that I appreciate them. I appreciate the work that they do for our kids. And that's all I've got to say. I just appreciate all of our staff.
Thank you, Mr. Lacey. I'll be quick because it's past my bedtime. Just a little bit about the book situation. I've been on the board I'm like Mr. Wise, a little over 14 years. In the 14 years, this is the 3rd book that we've had called to our attention that was obscene. The first 2, I spearheaded them myself, and I made the call to Dr. Phillips, and it got taken care of. Those books are no longer in the school. It's a simple phone call to take care of it. So out of 14 years, 1's bad enough. I totally agree, but it's kind of from some of the emails I got, it appears that people want to make it an epidemic situation, and I don't see that. I haven't seen that. I think Sumner County is basically good people, and I think our teachers and our guidance counselors and everything, they're not sneaking sneaking the kids in there and saying, do you want to be a little girl? Do you want to? We're not having that. And if you find that is going on somewhere, if you'll tell me the school and the teacher or the guidance counselor that's doing it, we'll get that stopped. So we don't do those things here. And I know a lot of people are moving in from other places. I've got a neighbor that came from San Diego. My wife was out doing what she does, mows grass and trims trees and all this kind of stuff. She is not a girly girl. And the neighbor was coming out the driveway, and she waved her down and found out that she was from San Diego, and that was, what brought you here? And she said, well, I've got a 10-year-old son that they were taking in the, they were teaching in the classroom to hate your parents. And she said, I moved out of there, and I came here because the school system's here. We don't have that here. And if you think that, if you even think there's some of that going on, if you'll let one of us know, by golly, we'll get it stopped. I ain't going along with that. I just ain't. Now, that being said, I'm going to move on. It's now time. I went to the TSBA leadership conference. It was Thursday and Friday. There was a lot of good things about it. The breakfast was really good. But there's a lot of other good things about it. And one of the stats that they said, which was kind of shocking to me, was that the average stay of a district a superintendent of schools is 4.5 years. So ours has made it much longer than 4.5 years, and it pains me to have to replace him. But we're going to have to do that as a board. We're going to have to do that, and so I'd like for y'all, if you would, to put on your calendars to save the date for November 29th here at 6 o'clock. We're going to ask the Tennessee School Boards Association to come and share with us what they do for helping us find a new director of schools. Those of us that's been through it before, you have no idea how much help these people can be. They actually reach out, and they bring you some really good candidates. They help us with the questions to ask them. They help organize the whole thing, and we think it turned out really, really well this time. We're going to hope that it does the next time. Mr.
I just wanted to mention on the 29th, I will be in somewhere between Chicago and St. Louis. I'm not sure exactly what the city is. I've got a meeting there, but I will attend that meeting virtually. So.
Okay. All right. Yeah, it's not a voting session. It's just going to be a special called study session.
I'll still be here.
Yeah. Okay.
On the phone.
All right. Good deal.
You say 5 or 6?
6. No, there's no public. Yeah, no public comments on study sessions. So, all right, we have nothing else to come before the board. We've made it before 10 o'clock, so we are adjourned.